we are good to go. Finally, we are live. Welcome to the Humane Mind, episode number 15, and today we'll be talking about the left versus right. What exactly entails everything on the left, what entails everything on the right, and we kind of have a actual example of something that I think is pretty commonplace on the right with one of our other buddies here who kind of has been on a couple of streams so far. So apparently Zach's comment section on his video, or one of his most recent videos, or is this a recent video, or is this an older video that just now?
It's the most recent one. Let me start my stream and then we can get into it.
All right.
Hang on a second.
All right, Nesman's going to start his end.
Yes. Hang on a second. We're live. All right. So today we're going to be discussing what is left, what's right, and whatever else is in between. But before we get into that, I do believe it'd be important to show a little bit of comment reading because.
Well, we'll wait till Zach gets here to do the actual comment reading. I was just getting the setup of.
Really should be here when we read those comments.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, but the situation that I want to talk about. So we'll get to this when we're talking about left versus right. But it's the cult of personality, which I think happens a lot more on the right, and I'll get into why I think that is. And so I think this is a clear example of cult of personality at play and how destructive that type of thing is. All right. So who wants to start on talking about what exactly? Or does anybody actually know what the difference is between left and right? Because we talked about this on previous streams, and I came to the conclusion that I think the overall is that the left is collectivist kind of mentality, and it's like this group has this point of view, and this group always does this, or it's basically like building off of stereotypes is the entire leftist ideology, whereas the right, at least the way the right should be, or at least this seems to be the, and again, I'm talking about stereotypes, right? The trend amongst the right is more individualist ideas, is you are yourself, and even though you have to put this label of left versus right, which is a collective, right? Being on the right side is in itself a label of a collective group, but people on that end tend to see themselves more as individuals following their own ideologies or their own paths, rather than, I'm of this group, so that way I have to think this way or have to act this way, or I'm not. It's not following the herd mentality. Or at least that's my
also, something I want to point out is, for instance, when people talk about if some person in particular is on the left or the right, for instance, people argue, oh no, Obama was an authoritarian right-wing president, more right-wing than George W. Bush is when it comes to drone strikes, or Donald Trump is on the authoritarian right, or whatever. Certain people, for instance. And other people would say, yeah, that's pretty true, and others would say, no, Obama's on the authoritarian left. But, and especially when the whole libertarian authoritarian skill comes into practice, it can make people strongly disagree on that. So, versus right, usually when I think of the left, I think of more of a state-controlled economy, in the sense of in some cases like communism and socialism. You tend to lean to the left. When it comes to less economic freedom, it seems like they kind of lean a little more to the left. You tend to lean more to the right, and people tend to associate communism and socialism as something on the left, and capitalism is something on the right.
I generally subscribe to the theory when people say that communism and fascism are opposites. I think that's total bullshit. I honestly think both communism and fascism are far left collectivist ideologies. The further right you get, you get to libertarianism, and the furthest right person possible would be an anarchist, an anarcho-capitalist.
That's what I always assume is the far right is the anarcho-capitalist. When people say how right am I, and I'm like, I'm an anarcho-capitalist. Isn't that as far right as you can go? At least that's what I thought. But apparently to other people, they think Richard Spencer is as far right as you can go, and you're like, that seems like
that's the problem I have.
Yeah,
not really. If you I watched his interview with Roaming, and I remember she kept noting oh, you're to the left of me on all these things.
Yeah, so that's
for instance,
that's what I don't understand is when people say that that's the alt-right is in the far right, and you're like, no, that's like the very left of the right, at least my understanding of it.
Right. Yeah, here's how I would think of it when I hear a far leftist say, "Oh, we have a rising far right," and it's like, I asked a leftist, I was like, "How do you define the far right?" Because obviously people define it under different terms. He says he's referring to the authoritarian right, the Nazis, the white nationalists, etc. I get the impression that when he thinks far right, it's like the authoritarian right. Then you got the far right economically speaking, you know, but like the libertarian right, the authoritarian right. When I think of far left, I'm thinking as hard to collectivism as you can get. And yeah, I do believe that you get really far right in the economically speaking, like anarcho-capitalism, or as far left. But it could be a bit of confusion there. Are we talking when it comes to as far left as you can get, like anarcho-communism, anarcho-socialism? And when it comes to fascism, I've seen people argue about what that actually is.
Yeah.
I would argue it's radical. It's like authoritarianism on steroids. People say it's authoritarian nationalism. Some argue it's with that combined with ultra-capitalism, which it doesn't seem like dictators tend not to like free markets or anything like that at all. The only person that I can think of that would kill for the free market was General Pinochet.
Hey, remember Connor Johnson? He's asking if he can join. Do you mind me sending him an invite?
Who is that?
I have no problem with if he wants to talk. Wait, is there someone in the chat?
Yeah, if he wants to join in, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
I don't remember him exactly, but
I think he's one of Loudmouth's patrons.
Yeah,
I think. I don't know.
He can join, but
yeah, sure. Oh, hey, some random geek is in the chat. How you doing? Oh, he might not be here, but either way, yeah, but I think fascism is not an exclusively right-wing thing. I think I think it's more of it could be a left and right-wing thing, like authoritarian left, authoritarian right.
I mean,
I think it'd be a great thing. Good.
It is like there is a collectivist mindset. Like even though they are different, like when you think of, sort of race realism or white ethno-nationalism or whatever, and then you think of some of the identity politics that comes from the left. There's a lot of collectivist, even though they come from different intentions, different places, it's still coming from a place of collectivism.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always thought the same thing. Yeah, that they both really seem more alike. They hate each other. All right, white nationalists and social justice warriors, but they're more alike than they like to think.
Yeah. It's a weird because they see a difference or whatever. They see this huge gap between them two, and they're like, oh, then we must be on complete opposite sides. And it's like, no, you're seeing a difference more on the up and down rather than the, left versus right. Yeah.
I get this impression when people are like, "Oh, we should have a white ethno state." It sounds very authoritarian, rather than to like anything to the right of anything.
Yeah.
It sounds extremely authoritarian, and when people talk about a far right, and it's, and here's the thing, right? You're not gonna believe this. Some people argue that if you're far right, like an anarcho-capitalist, that's not too far away from fascism, and it's like that never makes sense. It's like if you're far right economically speaking, but you're very socially libertarian, how like fascism? You're at the top of the authoritarian scale. Like that's the tip top of authoritarianism. All deep in the purple. How the hell can you be anywhere near the blue then? Because they would argue that you would leave it up to these corporations that could oppress us all or some shit, which, I mean, that goes into whether or not you're an ANCAP or not, but but people throw the term fascist, Nazi, and all these other terms around so much. They're just buzzwords in 2017.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, the more you go right, the harder it is to become authoritarian. Or at least that's my understanding of it, is so even though you see the whole grid and it seems like a perfect square, I don't think that's actually possible in reality. Because I think the further you go right, you have to go down on that scale, because at some point you cannot become more individualistic without releasing power over others. You have to, in order to get to the far right, you have to be at the bottom right, because somewhere along the lines, you can't stay on the middle of that line. Like that, if you're going completely right, there's no way to go across the entire middle and just hang out in the middle, because at some point, you're going to have some kind of government control that destroys individuality. Whereas if you're on the left, you're going to have a similar issue where you can't stay completely on the left line. You have to eventually start going up more towards authority, because there's going to have to be some kind of structure to make everybody be join in lockstep sort of thing. All right, what were you saying?
It sounds a little, I don't know, it sounds like I'm going into conspiracy theory here or whatever, or I've got my tinfoil hat on, but it seems like a lot of the racial tensions of the rise in that, it often comes from, left academia, like, because they have to justify things, because what we were moving towards, like, starting from the 90s, I guess, it was more of a spirit of multiculturalism, an enlightened multiculturalism where, there's a learning of other people's cultures or whatever, and it was very much an integration of everyone in society, and when that happened, that means that the academics who write articles about racism and sexism or whatever, it means that if things become peaceful, they've got nothing to write about in the news outlets, and the government doesn't have having like an all-out racial tension. I mean, that fits into the left agenda very much, because it means it justifies the left having power, or even the right wings when they start poking the bear as well. So it's all justification for that. It reminds me of the Clone Wars. It's like it's just you got two armies who are fighting each other, but they're all under the control of some big media empire thing.
Well, I don't think that's
We need more Star Wars references in the stream, because the stream was not enough of a sausage fest as it is, with a bunch of Star Wars references and nerd talk.
I don't know how accurate that analogy is. Whether that has any truth in it, that's what I think. That's my instinct tells me. It's like it's very much like Palpatine controlling the droids and the clones.
I'm not sure if there's a centralized force controlling this, but I think that is often a indicator when somebody is on the left. Because if you think about, this is not a conspiracy. When you think about what Democrats want, and as far as their practices and their policies, they tend to be geared towards sympathy towards illegals and sympathies towards first-generation immigrants and that sort of thing. And if you look at the voting records, you can't really look at the voting records of illegals, but it's pretty obvious that if you're illegal and you do go and vote illegally, you're not going to vote for the Republicans, because the Republicans, or at least conservatives or anybody on the far on the right in the United States, doesn't want you in their country at all. So you're not going to cast your votes for the guys who want to kick you out and keep you out. You're going to vote for the guys who are sympathetic to your cause. Well, if you have to look at the voting records of minorities and immigrants and people that are generally considered the minorities or the downtrodden, and the Democrats are fighting for their rights, those are groups who vote Democrat. It's a huge issue with black populations, where if there's an overwhelming black population, they will vote Democrat, even as their cities are falling apart around them. And this is something, like, I know you guys kind of don't like red pill black, but this is something she was pointing out was, look at all these cities that are run by Democrats, and they're mostly black populations, and they keep voting in a Democrat, and their city keeps getting worse every year or every time they vote. You'd think they would wise up to something, but
random geek joined this call.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't. You're new. You're someone I don't think have I chatted with you before?
No, you have not chatted with me at all. I chatted with S-Man Speaks before, and I've been on Lonely Wolf's channel about 4 times already.
I'm Jim from Loudmouth.
He's of Loudmouth Reviews. Yeah, he does movie reviews, but
Star Wars geek, because we did a whole stream on Star Wars.
Yes.
We didn't actually.
That stream was a bit of a shit show, but it was kind of fun,
So random. So I'm assuming you've been listening in. Maybe I don't know how much of the stream you've listened to. So
I think I listened to quite a bit.
So essentially, I would say that when it comes to, I think that I find it really annoying when people vote like when like they say, oh, you got to vote for this group because they may have supported you. It's like, for instance, if people are like, oh, you're a woman, you got to be a feminist. Up to in the past. All right, by that logic, blacks should vote Republican. Gay people or just LGBT people in general should be libertarians. And it's like the Democrats may have showed that they cared at some point, but it's like if they're not, if they seem to be failing you at some point, maybe it's a good idea to stop voting Democrat. I mean, and before anyone, if anyone's going to ask as an example, the Libertarian Party, around the time they started in the early 70s, showed support for same-sex marriage. That's why I use the analogy by that logic of, blacks should vote Republicans because Republicans freed the slaves. Well, the libertarians the LGBT people need to back the Libertarian Party because they were in favor of same-sex marriage before the Democrats voiced that opinion. In fact, around that time, the vice president, Democratic vice president nominee at the time, referred to gay people as queers, which was a slur at the time. So, yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah. So,
But I think if we're going to talk about like voting in the United States, what you just always got to remember is just like people do vote for many different reasons, and one thing that people do vote is they vote distinguishedly and stuff like that. Because yes, it'd be great to like vote for like a libertarian party or a libertarian candidate or a green candidate, stuff like that, and those people can definitely get into like offices on the local level, like city council, mayors, state representatives, and stuff like that. But on the national level, except for like Bernie Sanders and like one governor of like Arizona or New Mexico, if I remember, there's not that many people that from a third party that get into a political office and stuff like that. And so it would be great to like be able. It'd be great to vote for those candidates, but sometimes you just got to vote for the one that's closest to your policies.
Well,
so
that's actually
voting.
The reason why third-party candidates never do well in America is because of the winner-take-all part of the electoral college. If you win the
they get excluded from.
If you win if you win a majority of the votes in one state, you get the whole state. So basically, if you vote Republican in California, you're basically, if you vote at all, you're voting Democrat.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, how it is,
People do argue that the Democrats and Republicans are not all that different. I've seen people say that
current Democrats and current Republicans. Yeah, I agree.
I've seen people argue that Democrats are worlds ahead of the Republicans, but they are still. The reason people argued that Obama and Hillary Clinton are right wing are because of a pro-capitalist, pro-business stance or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And I even remembered because I was trying to find where on the political spectrum Hillary and Obama would have ended up on, and I found this test because I was
that chart you showed me it defies all reason, at least my reason. I mean, then again, that's not saying much.
Yeah. Here's where it put Donald Trump on the authoritarian right, way more authoritarian than anyone else on the chart. It put Hillary Clinton on the authoritarian right and to the right of Trump.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
It put Gary Johnson.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it put Gary Johnson on the extreme far right, but on the libertarian side. But he was to the libertarian authoritarian border, and Jill Stein was a center leftist on that scale as well. I went back. The test shows the 2004, 8, 12, and 16 elections. George W. Bush would have been to the right of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, and would have been more, I think, either more authoritarian around where they were on the authoritarian-libertarian scale. And your boy Colta Ham, your best friend Colta Ham, HUMANe, he says that Obama was right-wing to the right of George W. Bush because of the drone strikes. Speaking of which, me and HUMANe had a bit of a Twitter debate with a social democrat who says we're not in these countries for these wars for oil, just humanitarian reasons. I mean,
I don't buy that.
That's a pretty good point. Is the humanitarian drone strikes where we're like, oh, we don't care how many civilians we kill as long as we get that terrorist guy. Well, I mean, we even
those civilians, when they get killed by drone strikes, become unarmed combatants.
Yeah, and then and it's humanitarian.
When I hear when I hear people say, "Oh, we're just in Iraq for the oil," I go, and Because I'm just like, listen, would you rather have the psychotic Islamic country have the oil, or would you rather have us have the oil?
Yeah, and that's one of the things it's one of the things that Trump was saying during his campaign.
History.
Yeah, when he was saying, well, right now you gave the oil fields to ISIS. That's one of the things he said in his campaign, or in his debates in the campaign, is we gave the oil fields to ISIS. And so what he planned on doing was, okay, we're just going to bomb the crap out of them, and we're going to secure those oil fields for ourselves. And we may not get them for the United States, but maybe one of our allies, as opposed to the fucking terrorists.
At least when we won the oil fields. At least when we won the oil, we gave the keys of the oil fields to the people.
That doesn't
and then it eventually went to ISIS, and that's why he's like, that was stupid.
Yeah, that's.
But
hindsight.
Is that a left or right wing thing in your opinion, HUMANe? Because you've argued along with Loudmouth here that in previous streams that Hillary and Obama are on the authoritarian left.
Yeah, I think they are both on the authoritarian left because, the only way I could see people viewing them on the right is if they're looking at individual issues as opposed to their entire platform as a whole. And on certain issues, yes, they might be more far right than you would assume for someone who's mostly on the left. And so when you say, when you're talking about war and how they would handle the Middle East, maybe on those in that area, Hillary Clinton and Obama are on the far right. But when you look at their platform as a whole and what their entire, either their campaign or their actual presidency when talking about Obama, because thank God Hillary didn't get in there. But when you're looking at Obama's overall presidency, in addition to his campaign, you're like, that person is overall on the left. I don't know how you can say he's overall on the right. Like, he might be to the right of center on certain policies in certain areas. Yeah. But overall, when he, like, the Obamacare initiative, I'm like, there's nothing about that is right wing. And that is not, it's the Patient Affordable Care Act or whatever, but people can call it Obamacare. Anyway, that is so far left wing that even if he has some far right wing possible,
it's not far left. It's not far left in my opinion. It's not far left enough in my opinion.
Oh, okay,
because like the individual mandate, the individual mandate was kind of to help keep it self-funding, but the tax reform bill is going to remove the individual mandate. And fuck that tax bill.
Yes. So okay,
well, he wants Obamacare to fail. If
Obamacare fails, well, then they can usher in single-payer health care and then eventually universal health care, or government-controlled health care.
Universal health care, that'll never happen, please.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of significant and high-profile Democrats that don't want that either, unfortunately. But that's why for people who do want single-payer health care, government-run health care, or universal health care, or some combination of both private and public, but with a universal public option of a single-payer system and stuff like that, we just gotta constantly say we want single-payer healthcare. We want single-payer healthcare. We want single-payer healthcare, including to the Republicans and the Democrats and stuff like that. You just gotta constantly campaign it until we get something close to that. That's how it worked for gay marriage. First, we got domestic partnerships, and first it was in the individual states. Then there was civil unions, and then eventually we got gay marriage, and with the Supreme Court ruling.
I do got a question though for you guys.
Okay.
So, how far left, when we're saying someone's on the on the right or left in general, like Obama, how far left are we talking?
Obama's center. Obama's pretty much center, and Hillary's center.
Very left wing.
I mean, well, how far left?
I would put them both. I would put them both middle left, but I would put Hillary further to the left than Obama.
Because I was looking up Hillary Clinton, like her policies, and I ended up reading about like some of her upbringing, because it's funny to see people's upbringing might shape how they are as people. And it said that she was raised by her father was a staunch anti-communist, and it's, I mean, usually for instance, my parents were Democrats, and I would have probably voted Democrat when I was younger if I was able to vote, because they would constantly drill into my head that the Democrats are the good ones, the Republicans are basically Adolf Hitler in sheep's clothing or something. But essentially, it's like maybe she grew up as an a staunch anti-communist, and maybe she still is, because usually, usually the Republicans are really staunch anti-communist. Hang on a second, HUMANe just posted a link.
Yeah,
usually,
sorry, I'm linking you stuff. But...
Usually the Republicans are the hardcore anti-communist. Okay, so all right, so I'm gonna screen share this so everyone can get what I'm looking at.
So these are some of the things that I was looking at. So that when you're talking about left versus right, and this will give us kind of a I think we started. I think we may have put the cart before the horse a little bit here, because I gave my overall view, but we didn't explain why right is more individualist and why the left is more
also one of the biggest things that separates the left from the right is on the question of whether or not human nature is perfectible. The left tends to think it is to a degree, and the right doesn't think it is at all. And I don't think it is. I think human nature is very flawed, and it's not perfectible at all.
In my experience, I don't know if anyone is actually arguing that like human nature is perfectible. Human nature is just human nature. I'll be more interested to like study it and look at it than just like try to understand it, which will be a lifelong and more than one lifetime endeavor and stuff like that. Just one of those things that we're constantly doing, because that's life. Life is constant. You don't just like get one thing like Obamacare and just wipe your hands away and say, "Oh, we're done. We don't need to do anything," and stuff like that. Unfortunately, I just like after Obama got in office, I stopped caring about politics, which is the problem. There's not the problem that there's too much politics. There's a problem that there's not enough politics. And when Obama was in office, there wasn't enough politics.
Yeah, there was nobody fighting him on anything, and I mean, or at least for the most part, there was nobody fighting him on things, and he kind of just did whatever he kind of wanted.
Well, there's that one guy who screamed, "You lie."
There's that, and there's also the. There was also the Republicans who just like stonewalled Obama as well. Go ahead, Lonely.
Oh,
yeah. There was filibusters and stuff.
Yeah, so Aspie's point, because that comes back to the idea of there's a certain it comes from a lot of left-wing ideologues, that kind of sentimental view towards human nature, that we get back to nature because nature is good, and and that's kind of heir to the Rousseau type of thinking. A lot of those people are heirs to Rousseau, but then, the roads to Rousseau, they lead to kind of, sadomasochism and a lot of bad things if we go back to nature. Sometimes we try to get rid of one hierarchy, but then, nature will impose another hierarchy that'll be far less palatable.
Like, there was one really great political cartoon that kind of sums up why going back to nature is a really terrible idea. It is two cavemen looking at each other, and one of them says, something isn't right. Our air is clean, our water is pure, we get plenty of exercise, and everything we eat is organic and free range, and yet to live past 30.
It's funny.
Look at what HUMANe provided.
Botulism is natural.
All right,
no, a natural lifestyle is not better at all.
Yeah.
So, HUMANe, from what you've provided us, all right, so.
Yeah, and this is just one of the first things that popped up when you look up left versus right. But I thought this was a pretty accurate breakdown overall. I mean, I don't agree with it 100%, but it seems to have most of the basics down when talking about the difference.
Yeah. Left government, communism, labor, Democrats parties. For fuck's sake. Progressive nature looks to the future, egalitarian, idealism, equality. Conservative nationalist, equity, pragmatism, meritocracy, looks to the past, conservative nature. So with society and culture, and if you guys think there's something in here that's incorrect, we can chat about that, I guess. All right. So community-based ethics, society and culture, inclusive, multicultural, evolving. Aspie, was that you?
Yeah, but this is weird. On the left side, it says that that family, that children are the relationship between parents and their children is based on respect and trust. And on the right side, it says relationship is built on respect, and it's not built on. And I don't think. Yeah. I mean, fear is a part of it, but I don't think it's that intrinsic of a part of it.
Well,
I swear.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing is.
Well, you should fear your parents.
Yeah. Well, when you're looking at left, I see this thing where it says instilling.
You fear your parents, Aspie.
Yeah,
You know
on
that?
the left in the
Yeah,
same
not
family,
watching
when it
porn.
says the parents are instilling morals in their children, and I'm like, then if that's the case, then why is it usually people on the left are like, oh, well, my kid's telling me how to raise them? You're like, what? I listen to them. Yeah, that's the whole
That's not
trend.
my experience. That's
Yeah.
not my experience of people on the left is like where the kids are
Well,
raising their parents and stuff like
no,
that.
no,
No, more my impression of people on the left with as parents are just more helicopter parents and stuff like that. Always making sure that the kid gets the best possible thing that they can if they are in a position to.
Oh, I get ya.
Well, when you look at the transgender parents, they don't seem like the people who would be more towards the right, at least as far as politically or anything like that. Those are the parents saying, well, this is what my child said they want for themselves, therefore we're going to put them on hormone blockers, and that's the
Bullshit.
I know that those are the extremes, but I very much doubt.
I don't see anything wrong with that at all.
Yeah, I very much doubt that those parents would be on the right versus the left.
You know what I would say? You know what I'd say to my daughter if he said...
Oh, okay. So I think this is an area that we didn't quite go over. Did everybody tell which side they think they are on? Because I know I said...
Okay, I'll start. I am on the center right, a whole lot less center now. If we were to use the political compass test as an example, like grid space is where we are. I am 2 clicks out to the right, basically.
Okay, so you're pretty close to center then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other tests, well,
All right,
compared to where
and let's go down the line. Start with Aspie. Where do you think you fall, or have you actually taken a test and?
I've taken the test with the square and the everything, and I said that and it said that I was pretty I was kind of to the center of the right and more libertarian. Although I did take the test one time before, and it showed me like slightly in the authoritarian side, slightly less to the left, to the right, and I mean, and more on the kind of authoritarian side. But it was it wasn't out there.
Yeah,
so
that's the political compass. That's the political compass test. But where do you think you actually fall? Because I know I disagree completely with where I fell on that.
I am it showed me as being somewhat moderately right wing.
Yeah,
is what I would basically say.
I would say I'm
a business conservative.
Yeah, I would say I'm like in general. Where do I think I fall? I think I fall to basically where that test put me. I think that test, from how I answered, I think it was pretty accurate in my case. Like I've taken the Nolan test and the 8 values test, and both times it's put me as a libertarian, which I'm fine with.
Okay, Lonely Wolf.
Yeah, I'm very much in that green area. So probably when you think of someone like Jill Stein, like probably in a similar area, it's that green area on the lower left-hand quadrant. So very much libertarian, left and libertarian. But then I also take certain views are conservative. So I consider myself on the left, but I value pragmatism as a very important quality.
Yeah.
Okay. So
and I gotta say something that's very funny. I've seen a lot of funny memes about the kind of left libertarian side of that thing. Like there's this one picture of this thing stepping over it, and it's like, ooh, glad I missed that pile of crap. It's
okay.
Funny.
And what was your name on here? It's not Lord of Cancer, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dude. Yeah. Okay. Lord of Cancer.
Okay.
Where do you fall?
Yeah.
Still here.
No, he's in the hangout.
Yeah, Lord of Cancer live. Well, all right. So Loudmouth, where do you believe you fall left on when it comes to left or right?
I heard him sign
I'm a libertarian.
Okay, so but libertarian, and so you think you're more towards the middle?
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty a right libertarian.
Okay.
I don't believe in regulations, low taxes. All right, all kinds of things.
So you're probably more towards the middle right, or the right of, or the middle of the right.
I'm pretty right wing.
Okay.
Lord of Cancer. I don't know if your mic is working, but he says he's a right libertarian. How far right are we talking?
I'm probably middle of the square.
Okay.
Middle.
Like the middle of the libertarian right? Are you talking like that?
Middle of the libertarian right.
Okay.
Purple side.
Ah, okay.
All right.
So
and then I think random Sorry, what is your random geek?
I'm far left. Not as far left as you possibly could, but yet I am interested and intrigued with the ideas of narco-communism and narco-syndicalism. Not narco-capitalism. Narco-capitalism is just a piece of shit ideology. People who are narco-capitalists are big babies that don't like to pay taxes whatsoever. I'm fine with high taxes. That's what I seriously believe. I'm fine with high taxes if it does mean that there is social systems that are for the better for the majority of people. I mean, that's a society I want to see. A society that the most good is done for the majority of the people or for the most people possible, and stuff like that.
Well,
so almost totally opposite. Almost totally opposite of the society that America has now.
Yeah. All right.
The thing, the society which high social, where you have high taxes and social systems. I think a system like that can only work under certain circumstances. Like everybody uses Scandinavia as an example, like Sweden, Norway, and all those countries. But all of those countries have very small population, a very a very big oil industry. Homogenous. Well, Sweden used to be homogenous. I don't think anymore. And pretty much a whole bunch of other circumstances where you can have a system like that, and even so, they are still a bit more capitalist than we are. They have a lower corporate tax. Well, I think Trump just lowered our corporate tax to their level now, around 20%. Yeah, and a whole bunch of other things, and they their income taxes are still pretty high. Like I think just a little bit over 50%, but they're still remarkably thing is that this country is in a circumstance where it can somewhat handle that type of system, but I don't think it's something that could work in America, especially with the circumstance that America is in.
Yeah. Well, the other thing you have to.
But have we tried at all? We haven't tried that at all because it's been propagandized as being un-American and stuff like that. We champion the individual spirit and stuff like that, and personal responsibility, and because of how we are champion personal responsibility, we put it on the individual for their life problems when it's probably not the individual, and I think it is systemic. And I think a lot of problems that face a lot of marginalized people is a systemic issue. And I'm also a third wave intersectional feminist too, so there's that too. So that's why I'm
I can see that on your little banner here, which you can get.
I put that there specifically. Yes.
There's the Google Hangout toolbox where you can put your name on your screen. Okay, so
I would
want to know how you do. Okay, on our left-hand side in the Hangout itself, there's you got the chat, you got the screen share, you got those apps and stuff like that. There's the 3 buttons that's underneath that. It'll bring out a pop-out window of recent apps. You can add apps, and when you click on the Add Apps buttons, Hangout Toolbox is one of those buttons. It will look like a quote bubble with a camera inside of it with a blue background.
Yeah, trust me, it's pretty cool actually. So HUMANE,
but I will just quickly say that the tool this layout thing only works when you're on camera. When it's just your avatar, it won't be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so HUMANE Mind is an anarcho-capitalist. He's as far right, economically speaking, not socially right wing. Which there's another thing.
Yeah.
What are socially left, socially right? That is a bit vague. It's
that's where I think there's a huge issue with how people define things, because when you're talking about if the left and the right is the difference between collectives and individuals, well then being the ultimate individual is what are you doing turning off my camera?
It was laggy, bro.
Okay.
Everyone's camera was getting laggy.
Gotcha.
So.
That's
okay,
fair.
so if the left and the right are defined, so the left is collectivist, the right is individualist, well then when it comes to what individuals want to do with their lives, it is a more right-wing position to say, oh, if you want to get married and you're gay, well then go ahead and do that. As long as you're entering voluntary interactions, you can do that. It's a kind of a... You can do whatever you want with your life, even if it's to your detriment, or even if it's to the detriment of society. That is your free will at work. So in order to be the most individual... in order to be the most individual that you can be, then you should be allowed to do things like that. So it actually, in my mind, it makes more sense to be socially liberal would actually be a far right position as opposed to a far left. But
so I'm assuming you guys have heard of the terms like socially liberal, fiscally conservative, like
yeah, that's the Libertarian
yeah.
Party's kind of their mantra.
Yeah. So that's a very nice logo you got there, Loudmouth.
Well, thank you very much. I thought I'd do the same.
Yeah. When it comes down to
Believe me, if I know how to fuck myself, I probably would. I probably wouldn't leave my room. I mean, I guess I'm kind of close. I got sex toys that can help me with that.
All right. So, well, the other thing I wanted to say when Aspie was bringing up those the Nordic countries and all that sort of thing, if you look at their history, those countries used to be, first, second, or not first, second. They used to be like in the top 10 of countries economically growing. Where Sweden, I believe, was number 3, and now they are 17. So there is there's this old saying. It's like, what is the easiest way to get to a small fortune? Well, start with the larger one, and that's what those countries kind of did. Is they started off being economic powerhouses, and then because of their social programs, they kind of fell back, and now they're starting to get rid of some of those social programs and become and lessen those sorts of things and go back more towards what got them to where they were in the first place. And now they are seeing that increase in economic growth. But there was a period for Sweden, I believe it's about 60 years, where they went from, I'm pretty sure it was 3rd place to 17th. That is a huge fallback when you're talking about, economic situations, like 3rd in the world as far as economic growth and overall, or not just economic growth. I believe it was financially overall in the comparing all these different countries, they were one of the most economic prosperous countries. So they were on par with the United States and with all these other bigwigs, and then they fell back. So they lost a lot of clout and a lot of sway because they lost their economic their economic footing.
Which country are we talking about?
That was Sweden.
Sweden.
If you look at Sweden's history, prior to instituting their universal basic healthcare system and all of those social programs and stuff like that.
But I personally don't think that a country's growth is just matter so long as they're not in a deficit and stuff like that. So I mean, what's the point of ranking of being 3rd to the 17th and stuff like that? It's just your penis is big and all that stuff, but geez, all that matters is what kind of matters is emotional intelligence, and does it fit, I guess, and stuff like that. Because even though this is a complete side note, and it's hard for derailing the conversation, but believe it or not, it is a problem of it being too big. That's more often a problem for women, of it being too big than for it being too small.
Okay, so if we took that same mentality with economics...
It's also a problem for gay men and bi men, too.
But then again, from what I heard, is that gay men's relationships are...
You gotta get plenty of KY jelly.
Yes, there's that too.
No.
But most gay men's interactions or gay lovers' interactions, and doesn't usually involve sodomy, stuff like that. They show it in a way. It's just a blowjob and something like that. And hey, to each their own. Who cares?
Okay. This TMI by a long shot, but okay.
Gay sucks.
So so Aspie's gonna be happy learning that information. So you can thank some random guy, some random geek later. Anyway, so okay, there's a few things I know this would tie into other types of conversations, but when it comes to deficit and surplus, I guess there's a few things that you can do to cut back on a deficit and increase the surplus, For instance, people say a way to do it is to end a drug war, for instance. To make it even more, to increase economic growth, you could kill the drug war, pardon all nonviolent drug offenders, and that...
I think we should just do that regardless, anyway.
Social Security?
That would definitely...
I don't know about privatizing anything, honestly.
That would definitely...
I don't know about privatizing anything, honestly.
That would definitely...
I don't know about privatizing anything, honestly. I don't know about privatizing anything, honestly.
I was gonna save that
Okay.
for another stream, but I think if we want to go down that road, we can talk about privatizing certain things like the male education, the police, the courts, the military, prisons.
Please don't. No, let's not privatize any of those things. I don't trust markets to work things out because if it's a market, it can be manipulated.
Okay,
We
so
already
you
have
don't.
privatized mail in a sense because I mean, unless people have not heard of UPS.
The post office sucked.
Yeah.
Okay,
No,
well,
but at least have that option
Privatized
there.
Amtrak.
so
Amtrak should be privatized.
okay,
'cause they could
so
make money from
but
that.
he's on the left, remember? So he's for
Yeah.
more government as opposed to less government. Am I correct in that? Like you want because you want social programs, like you want universal health care, you want the public to own all of these things, right?
Yeah, I don't see what's wrong with that, honestly.
Nice one,
Because it's for what you think is the best for society. And this is when I'm going back to Sweden, when you're talking about economic growth, if you look at economic growth for a country, what does that do for the poorest in that country? It's the mentality of a rising tide raises all ships, right? So the people who are doing really well are doing better. The people who were doing bad now are doing pretty decently. Compare the poorest person in the United States to the poorest person in some place like Zimbabwe or Ethiopia. It's not even like the poorest person in the United States is most times richer than the richest person in Zimbabwe. Like,
Which is why most people are trying to immigrate to our country.
yeah,
Take
but
a look at what I'm about to put in the chat.
but that
Alright,
sort
hang
of
on a second.
thing, that sort of
Yeah.
thing is the result of our privatization of industry and our economic overall growth. But when you make
our neoliberalist capitalist economic policies and foreign policies, or like big businesses infecting like our government and stuff like that, has caused us to when a country has resources that we want, but they're not playing ball with us or not playing ball with the way we like, we go into those countries and then or either fund a coup d'etat to overthrow that government like we've done in South America and other places, or we just bomb the hell out of it and then put in our own government or someone who will be our puppet for us. And that's how we put Saddam Hussein into power, and then he was doing stuff that we didn't like, and then we tried to overthrow him. Also, Saddam Hussein kind of didn't play ball with us either, so yeah, there's that.
This is the problem
And
with interventionism. That's the problem with interventionism. I'm in favor of non-interventionism. As I was literally arguing with a person, me and HUMANe were
Corrective.
Yes, we were arguing with a social democrat who argued that we're not in there for the oil, we're for humanitarian reasons, which is obviously objectively untrue.
okay, well, so it sounds like your objection was that corporations were using the government to do their bidding, right?
Corporatism.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay. So your solution to that is to give more power to the government and basically
power to the people who elect their government officials.
Okay, well that's the
Listen, power corrupts all. You're always gonna have corruption in a government, no matter who you put up there. So yeah, if you
But with that idea that power corrupts all, does that mean we should stop trying at all?
No. It means we should decentralize power as much as
government that
possible.
checks itself.
Or
Yeah.
which we kind of do now.
Yeah.
Which we kind of do now with the three branches, as the Trump administration has proved. You can't just have one branch of the government just do everything it possibly wants.
And that's the idea behind that is the separation of power. That's how you avoid power corrupting. Is you separate it. You avoid the concentration of power as much as possible. So by that logic, it would make sense to have the power distributed as much as possible, meaning less power to the government, because the government is a concentration of power on individuals as opposed to the people.
Yeah, and it's gotten too big for its britches.
Well, so
granted, now I would definitely say, so as long as there are the social safety net programs in state, there is some kind of government oversight just for infrastructure and just for the utilities and stuff like that, just to make sure that people are not being cheated on or anything like that. And as well as there's, so long as there's the social safety net there, I don't think the government needs to be as involved in the citizens' life beyond that.
okay,
So,
that's
but
which is why.
Are you a minarchist? Am I
I
getting
guess so. I don't know. I don't know. I have
Well,
to read into
no,
that.
if he's talking about social safety nets and stuff like that, it's possible that that could be the minimum amount of government that is required.
Okay.
But that doesn't seem likely because you would need so many other government provisions to enforce that law. Because by saying, I want the smallest amount of government possible, but I want universal health care and I want all these social safety nets, the only way to raise or to ensure that those institutions are funded is to have a tax revenue. So you'd need to have the IRS, you'd need to have ways of getting tax money into the government. So then you need to find some way to enforce those tax laws, and that encourages a larger police state. So if you're talking about all of these policies,
some kind of police state,
you're going to need a larger government for every program that government handles.
Be right back.
So
well, I think I was thinking that like I don't mind that big of a government, I guess, because we do have a big country and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, and you also were saying that you think that people or that society's needs should be met over the individuals. So that by its very, if you take that out to its logical conclusion, you're going to need to have a very large and very powerful government to ensure that individuals aren't doing what they want to, because what they want could be imposing, it could be negating what's good for society. Like,
any examples of this government that we're talking about is a government that has its representatives democratically elected by the people. So, like, those governments are still beholden to their constituents in that regard.
Okay, but see, if I am say Donald Trump, and I'm like, okay, I don't want to be a part of your system. I'm taking all of my money. I'm taking all my businesses. I'm not going to be a part of it. That's a problem for your idea of what a government should be, because those are the people who are funding most of it. So you would have to have, no, you can't leave the country, and you can't take your businesses, and you can't take all this sort of thing. All of that belongs to the people, right? Is that, I mean, because it's the individual needs to be sacrificed for the collective.
The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or of the one, I think.
Yes. So
That
in order to institute that, I don't see how you could without a government that is able to say, no, Donald Trump, you can't do whatever you want. You have to, you have to give your stuff up to the people who need it most, right? Because the needs of the many. So I don't see how you could get a minarchist government and still enforce your.
I mean, it'd be nice to get a minarchist government and stuff like that, but I think that also would like involve a kind of like basically just a social contract with many different people. Many people got to like agree with this as much as possible.
But no, what I'm saying is you can't have both, because there are going to be dissenters. There's going to be people who don't want to participate in your system, and that creates a problem for your system if those dissenters are the people who are providing most of the stuff.
Okay, so
I don't think you can have a minarchist and a collectivist.
I'm fine with that, I guess.
Minarchism is a right libertarian political philosophy which advocates for the state to exist solely to provide a very small number of services.
Yeah.
Which HUMANE is an anarchist, so because I'm oppressive, guys, I'm going to have to assume that HUMANE is not does not like, or at least he's obviously not a minarchist.
Well,
but he doesn't.
So I've stated this previously. I think anarcho-capitalist is the best way to structure society. If that's not feasible,
Bullshit.
if that has all kinds of problems and leads to a societal collapse, a minarchist government is the secondary option. I'd rather have a minarchist government than what we have right now, but I'd rather have an anarcho-capitalist government over a minarchist, because I think it's going to be.
I never
better.
want that whatsoever. Jeez.
Hang on a second.
I don't want unchecked capitalism. No, fuck capitalism.
I'm Random Geek. I'm going to call you Jonathan throughout the stream because that's your actual name.
Yeah, that's fine.
So,
that's my real name.
Essentially, a popular model of the state proposed by minarchists is known as the Night Watchman state, in which the only governmental functions are to protect citizens from aggression, theft, breach of contract, and fraud, as defined by property terms, limiting it to these three institutions: the police, the military, and the courts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's minarchism, and I mean, from the things I've stated, I've been branded a minarchist by some people. I think HUMANE has done that as well.
Yeah, I think you tend more towards minarchist. So that's the ultimate definition, but there may be other goods and services that the government has to provide in order to maintain a stable society. Just the minarchist is the least amount of government in order to make sure things don't just go into chaos.
And besides, the reason I say that the government has gotten too big for its britches is, for example, until 2000, I think it was either 2003 or 6, there were anti-sodomy laws in several states. So even if you're with your consenting partner, the state would stick their nose into your business and prosecute you for consensual sexual acts with your partner, whether it's oral or anal sex. Now, whether you think that's disgusting or not is to each his own. But to have to think that the state would even go that far into sticking their nose into your business, especially that far, is terrifying.
Well, to be fair, those have been on the books for a very long time, like close to the founding.
Doesn't make it a good idea that we always had laws against those things.
No, I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm saying that kind of counters the point I think you were trying to make, because if you look back at the majority of the American history, we had those laws and we got rid of those laws. So that would be authoritarian, or that would be, they were being very, very imposing, and they became less imposing over time in that particular area.
Like I said, until 2003 or 6, they got declared unconstitutional. I think there were reports of some states still trying to do it, but I think they've given up finally. And also whether or not it was from the past.
But you're saying it's got too big for its britches, so I'm looking. What you provided is kind of a counterexample of that.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, okay, let me rephrase. It had gotten too big for its britches in that area, especially.
Yeah, well, I think it started off too big in that area because that was mostly a state's issue as opposed to the federal.
And sometimes I mean, I do find myself torn when it comes to the state versus federal power, like. The U.S. Supreme Court, for instance, the U.S. Supreme Court was the one who struck down all 50 states' bans on same-sex marriage, which I was fine with. And
what actually struck down DOMA? DOMA was the Defense of Marriage Act, which basically forbid the Congress from striking down state laws that where they could not make it illegal, but not. Yes, they could not. Yes, certain states could make not provide same-sex marriages. I mean, I don't think marriage is something that is. I don't think people have a right to marriage, but I think the difference is that that it said that states couldn't be made, could not didn't have to. DOMA basically said you didn't have to provide sex marriages.
But basically, I would say that the government should not have ever been involved in marriage. But to be fair, the thinking of the time, around that time, was different from how we think today. I used to think, the only reason I would ever say the government should get involved in marriage is to prevent things like child marriage from happening. Me and HUMANE, I think, did go over this a little bit in a stream about discussing YouTube, and then we solved those problems. But essentially, as to sum up, we were talking about getting the government out of marriage altogether, except for in the cases of child marriage. Then they go ahead.
I used to be against gay marriage. That was before I was out and accepted myself. I was like, I used to be so against it, and then I realized, wait a minute, I had feelings for both sides. Because I switched my side and realized I've been repressing myself for quite some time now.
Well, even though, so I think you're saying that you're bisexual, right? Am I misunderstanding? Okay, so, but even if that's the case, I know that there are a lot of gay people who are actually against marriage. Like,
so do I.
Okay, so I was wondering...
You're bisexual, so basically you're just gay.
Well, that's what he wants to do, right, Hunter? No. He wants to fuck you?
I don't know. I think bisexuality among men is a lot more rare because men early on either go dicks yes or dicks no. Women are a lot more flexible with this.
Well, they're a lot more flexible in a lot of ways, but
you're gonna post that stereotype on me.
Yeah, well, it's a running joke.
I'm joking.
Okay. But so my question
who
was
cares, like, who's more likely to be bi or pan or gay or anything like that? It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect me whatsoever.
Yeah. Okay. So my question for Lord there was, do you plan on getting married, or was it kind of this might affect me in the future, so now I am for marriage, or is it explain the connection for me, because that's
I might get married because the guy I'm in a relationship with, it's been working out so well. I'm not sure how it's going to end up, but if it does, we're going to go through with it.
Okay.
Oh, awesome.
I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
See, I want to.
But here's the thing, though. He's in the military, but he's not exactly out. He's still kind of in the closet.
Okay, well, don't go too far in the details then. If he's not out yet.
Oh, I'm not saying.
He's still having adventures. He's still having adventures in Narnia.
Well, here's the thing, though. Even though Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed, he's still not sure about coming out yet.
Okay.
And I said, look, when you do come out, I will be there for you.
Well, there's plenty of people who were out. You can't see the camera, so I'm doing air quotes. So there's plenty of people. I was in the military. I did 8 years in the Air Force, and you could tell when there was a gay person who wasn't out yet because of the And then after that was repealed, and then they were out, and people were like, "Yeah, we knew it's not a it doesn't change anything. It was kind of obvious, dude. I don't know what you think you were hiding." Yeah.
Well, I told you, don't ask and don't tell.
Yeah, it was don't ask and don't tell, but it's kind of like, we're not going to ask you, but we know where you fall. That's why you don't get invited that's why you don't get invited to certain events, because it's intended for, when you were going out and looking for women, we don't invite the gay guy, right? It's kind of like, because it's like, well, because that's not interesting to you.
My thinking is you do invite the gay guy.
Not really, because they could act as
that's my thinking.
Yeah, I get the wingman situation, but you knew he was gay and not out gay. That's what I was. So you
could be like out to help you get laid, but not have any interest.
I get that. I get that with
it's
a
like
with
the perfect man to have around you, actually.
Yeah, I get that, but I'm saying this person wasn't out, so they hadn't told anybody. But it's like, because you invite them out, and then they think that they have to pretend, right? So
I keep telling him that. I was like, he said, "Oh, I've got a therapy." I keep telling him, "You need to come out. It's gonna be better." And who cares what these people are gonna say?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, and the other situation is...
Sometimes people struggle with themselves often enough, and a friend of mine actually did confide into me about, like, him being gay and stuff like that, and told me just keep it to yourself. I told the other friends, and then don't tell anyone else. But soon after, he eventually just came out publicly to his family and stuff like that. Unfortunately for him, it's working out.
Yeah.
Before we go on, I do have a joke for... I do have a joke for Jonathan here. He's muted. I have a joke for you.
Okay.
My favorite rapper is 50 Cent. Do you know what 50 Cent is called in Zimbabwe?
No.
What?
$180,952.
That's an inflation joke.
Yes.
Well,
it reminds me of Jimmy Carr's joke. It is said that like an African child can on $1 can live for an entire week. That tells me one thing: we've been overcharged for our groceries. Another favorite Jimmy Carr joke: if we're all God's children, what makes Jesus so special?
That's a pretty good one too.
Oh. Yeah, there was one that went because he did this thing where he went on these level of jokes and he went up and up and up. What did he say? Like, how do you get a gay man to fuck a woman?
Oh, I remember that one.
You shouldn't have cunt.
I will be honest. I have been with some women and some men. But the guy I'm with, I'm like, yeah, he's a one for me.
Okay. Well, congratulations. All right, so we kind of got sidetracked here. Let's try to steer more back towards the left or the right.
Oh, come on. Every conversation needs to be about gay sex.
Yeah, although I understand.
Well, I mean, it is related to the topic because we were talking about gay marriage, and I just getting clarification on that.
Yeah.
So this is an area where, if you go back to that chart that I sent you guys, where it is typical that people on the right tend to be more religious, and this is where you get the people who are staunchly against all kinds of behavior that they would. See, I'm going to use the term as it actually means, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody, but it's deviant behavior. Now, deviant by itself is not necessarily negative, although there is the negative
Sexually
connotation.
deviant.
It just means different from the norm. Like, it's not the normal behavior, because typically the normal behavior is a man and a woman and a family. That's typical behavior. So deviant behavior, and I think this is pretty accurate using that word because it's less than 3% of the population falls into the LGBT plus whatever group.
I think it's like 4%, but yeah.
I'm
totally a deviant.
Yeah, it might be up to 4%, but still 4% of the population that does not fall into heteronormative. That is a small deviation. So because this is the thing used in statistics, right? Standard deviation is a common term. So saying 4% of the population, well, that right there, that's not within the standard deviation. So if 96% of the population all falls into men and women in heterosexual relationships, that's outside of the norm. 4% is extremely small. If it was closer to like 40 or 30% being in the LGBT community, then you would understand calling that deviant behavior would be a kind of a doesn't quite make sense at that point, because it's still off of the norm, but the norm is so close to the norm that it's not. But the fact that it's 4% or less, that by its definition would be deviant behavior, because it's not normal. It's not the usual behavior. So that's why.
Hey, can I?
Okay.
Can I say something? Can somebody back away a little bit from their mic? It sounds like they're blowing their mic. You know.
And you don't like the sound of somebody giving a BJ to their mic? What's wrong with you? All right.
This stream is degenerate as fuck. Anyway.
Yeah.
So it's
I'm sorry. I mentioned my sex toys.
Moist.
Okay.
All right.
So I'm talking at the same time.
Okay. I'm muting everybody for a second so we can hear Zach, the Edwards of Zach.
All right, so I think we need to do a little bit of build-up. So the reason that Zach is kind of important, or Zach's issue that he's been experiencing lately is important to what we're talking about, left versus right, because it's something I wanted to get into, but we kind of didn't get to it because we got sidetracked, because the left tends to be collectivist, like, you are a member of this group, you know, you should be involved in this group, and everybody in this group should kind of help each other out and should all... I mean, in order to do that, you got to kind of think and act the same, right? This is why they don't like it when women didn't vote for Hillary. The people on the left are like, hey, you're a woman, you should have voted for Hillary. Or you're black and you didn't vote Democrat, what's wrong with you? You're an Uncle Tom. That's the typical thing that comes out. But on the right...
Yeah.
Oh,
if we're applying collectivist attitude with the Bering fan base,
no.
Credit, I don't think that I don't think that like a super majority of the Bering fan base is all a bunch of leftists.
No, I'm not calling them leftists. I'm actually saying that they are more towards the right because this is the cult of personality. Because the right kind of epitomizes individuality, we tend to put individuals on top. And I know Hillary Clinton on the left was kind of like hey, this is our spokesman, but they would have been happy with any woman. Any woman that was running that would have been, all women have to vote for that woman because they're a woman. Whereas on the right, it's the Donald Trump embodies all of our values, and so let's all rally behind Donald Trump, and now Donald Trump can do no wrong. It's and Milo Yiannopoulos has a similar kind of thing. It's like, Milo Yiannopoulos, he's great, and he says all these things that we agree with. Now we're not going to make... Anytime he fucks up, anytime he says something that you're like, ooh, why did you say that? People are like, oh, no, he didn't do anything wrong. Nothing to see here. He's being oppressed. He's being... and that's what I'm seeing with Bering. Is he develops a fan base because of some of the things he's said in the past, and it develops this cult of personality, so that way they're like, oh, but he said all of these things that are so good that we believe, he is now immune from all criticism.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's what I see a lot on the right, because they're so individuals first, and they pick one individual and like, okay, that individual represents us, and they support him no matter what. That to me is a huge problem.
Yeah, and Zach's video is an embodiment of that behavior, is evidenced by the like-dislike ratio being where it's at. And after comment reading.
Yeah, so S-Man, take over and show us these comments because I haven't seen any of these comments yet.
Yes, I really want to read out.
They're really bad. They're really bad.
They're like the biggest.
I want to see.
You'd think that with some way some of these people are commenting, you'd think Zach had killed a kitten in the video. I swear to God.
Done some crush porn.
Yeah, well, Zach did kill some people, but that was not. It wasn't in the stream, so.
Okay, so my comment I left 7 hours ago, which hopefully Zach pins or something. Hey, Bering fans, actually listen to the entire video, not just the parts Bering cherry picked. Hardly addressed anything Zach actually said.
Okay, wait, he actually made a video, or?
I think that comment.
Yeah, he made a full video.
For me to be able to find it.
I'm not gonna say what he is.
Okay, so Bering made a video about you, or did he just comment on
video?
Your... Oh wow!
No, Bering made a full response video to me. It was about 16 minutes long, something like that.
Wow. Okay.
No, 13 minutes and 18 seconds.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And Zach's video is 17 minutes, and Bering cherry-picked the shit out of it. Like, he hardly responded to anything Zach said. Zach makes a point, and he says, "You look like this character from some movie," and I'm like, I never heard of the fucking movie, but...
I wouldn't even mind that, honestly. But the thing that really gets annoying is that he plays the audio of me, the footage of me making these arguments going towards the back half of the video. He doesn't address them at all. If he wants to joke about me looking like a Razor Fist ripoff, all he wants, do it whatever the fuck that he wants in that regard, but address the fucking arguments.
Yeah, I could see you being a Razor Fist knockoff. Just grow your hair out longer.
Well, my next video is going to be...
Sorry, I forgot my wig.
Anyway, so...
Well, my next video is going to be on pit bulls, so I might get a few bad responses.
Probably. Alright, so this is from Lonely Wolf. I just watched the video of how you do your avatar during a live stream. I quite like the... Okay, this has nothing to do with it. Don't concern yourself with the Trigglypuff screeching in the comments. Bear cock as they use as a pacifier. Very true. Then there's Bering's comment, which has more likes than the actual video, but then again, like, Bering's fans like autistically screech.
That's not too surprising.
If you look
You're talking
at this,
about somebody that has one of the biggest dislike armies on the internet.
Holy moly!
I would not mess with
Bering. Here's Bering's actual channel. He pasted this from a tweet and put this in the comment section. It's evidenced by the @loudmouth R.
I was wondering about that. That looked weird to me too. Yeah.
And then, yeah, that was copy pasted. I looked at his Twitter as evidence. And the comments, when I watched Bering's original video that Loudmouth was speaking about AIU, well, in the context of it, Bering was referenced in the way Bering edited the video. He was referenced more than AIU was, so it sounded like psychopath, not AIU. Sounds like someone did something you didn't like, so they must be a horrible waste of air, right? Saying there's a hypocrisy that Bering was having, where he was saying that Christy Winters is basically Stalin for spreading his docs, which that was a dumb bitch move. Then you got dating with AIU, who spreads other people's doxes, which is a complete bitch move. Not saying, oh, this person's horrible because they dox people. He's saying it to her because she did it to him. But when someone else does it with who fucking shits.
I mean, the whole fucking world went to an end, like, just because it wasn't even based on any conclusive evidence that Like because it started off with, and the story kept changing all the fucking time. It started off with,
Yeah,
like, Christy and Danny dox me, and then it was like, oh no, they just like they might have handled it.
Spread the docs, yeah.
Yeah, I
This is
don't know.
why.
The evidence against her is all circumstantial, whereas with Devin Tracy, the fucker has admitted to doing it like dozens of times. Like, the evidence against that guy couldn't be more overwhelming.
Yeah.
And that was,
Okay,
I
to be
mean,
honest, people like Bering are the reason why I consider myself a rogue skeptic.
I think the
yeah.
term skeptic
Okay.
is just really fucking bad. Okay, another
okay.
comment is Caleb Smith. I don't see what's wrong with Bering's editing. He's essentially taking the guy. If he would have included another several seconds, it's not as if he would have been forced to look at Loudmouth's mug any longer. Also, besides, think about it like this. Due to the proper context, he would not have been able to use the clip because he wasn't the one being sound like he was being called a psychopath. Association on Loudmouth's behalf towards Bering on it. He was just saying it's all Loudmouth was saying. And that was Zach's entire point. Completely was either he was just too oblivious to it, or I thought it was quite clear that Loudmouth was not talking about Bering. He edited it like that. It was because your nice way to spell, because of your audio. And if someone is making a video, they are most likely not going to want to keep the ear rate. So this person can't speak coherent English, so he's probably a spastic.
How is my audio now, motherfucker?
Then why use the fucking clip at all? Alright, that clip had nothing to do with the main video. Fuck. Yeah, that clip I used from that live stream where I was partially drunk, I might add, alright, had nothing to do with the main video, which was about Rolling Millennial's interview with Richard Spencer, but I never criticized Rolling Millennial's interview with Richard Spencer.
I'm sorry about that. I think Bering is just salty of being called out on his hypocrisy and the whole matter.
Screamer.
Yeah, let me just.
Why hasn't he made a video about me? That's what I was like. Man, I'm the kind of the catalyst for all of this, right? Or at least that was my understanding of it.
I was kind of the catalyst because I'm the one who showed you.
Yeah.
And then I bragged about it, which pissed a lot of people off.
Yeah.
But,
okay, so
I have a question. Did you use a lot of tags, HUMANe?
No, I did not. But I know Bering has seen my video because he commented on my video.
Pissy with Bering. Bering got pissy with HUMANe for re-uploading a stream he was in.
But yeah, he's commented on my on 3 different videos on my channel, so he is aware of it, but has not made any kind of rebuttal or video about it. So I don't know.
Okay, so here's a few other comments I just really want to look at because they're really stupid.
Yeah, I figured it was. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, since we're now making this thing about fashion and every other little thing in the video other than the point you were trying to make, stock art of a 110-pound skinhead in a coat he stole from a lesbian and matching gloves and old lady sunglasses.
Okay, that's how it's actually funny.
That's funny, but what does that have to do with...
No, he's got it wrong. He's got it wrong. I borrowed my sunglasses from my grandpa and I borrowed the pea coat from my grandma.
Wow. Let me just say something. I've had few encounters with Bering. Doesn't seem like he's bad.
Oh no, I don't think he's a bad guy. I just think he's a hypocrite.
No, he's just for saying it's a
That's what I've always said, yeah.
And I mean, he commented on one my very first video, said, "Hey, thanks Half Gay Jew for liking my video or giving me a shout out." Just play that fucking guitar music.
Half Gay? Oh, I think that's Aspie playing on the guitar.
Anyways.
Oh, I was gonna mute him for a second.
Like I was saying, I'm that weird person who's caught up on the drama. That person who's always stuck in the middle but narrowly just voices but just sits back and watches. I've been involved in just one drama thing, and that was with a guy who was a nobody who went after my good friend Liz Reptile, calling her a man and stuff.
Oh fuck.
Yeah,
but
I like that.
What happened was we invited this guy on, I'm not saying his name, and our friend came along and said that he was never a radio show host. He was a co-host for some time now. What happened was there was an incident of a guy getting sucked into a wood chipper. It's meant to be a joke, but what he initially did was he crossed the line by coming in and trying to air the footage of the woman, of him harassing the woman. So basically what happened was he called this woman up just to harass her, basically, and he wanted to put it on air. You don't do that to someone who lost their loved one in an accident like that. And now he's working at a gas station now, and he's living in a shitty trailer. He's had his electronics taken away from the police, and now he's back on YouTube. Which, by law, he is not allowed to have that. Because if the police catch him, he could be going away for a very long time.
Yeah, violating his probation.
And here's another comment. You need better production value. No one's going to take your channel seriously. Work on editing, improve audio. The editing on Zach's video is fine. It's just he does need Audacity. He needs to get the program Audacity. It works pretty well with video.
Well, I got myself a new microphone for Christmas, so that solves that issue. As far as the editing goes, unless I took like classes or something, I do not know of how I would get better.
Well,
it's pretty easy on Audacity.
Audacity is free. So what we've I don't know if anybody else does this, but I definitely record my audio and video separately, because otherwise you're gonna get the video from your camera. Yeah. So then I use Audacity to edit it and take out any background noise, which for some reason it likes to pick up my computer fan for some unknown reason. So that is pretty loud when I actually record, but I'm able to use noise reduction to remove the sound of the fan completely, and then you just sync.
The problem with the fan.
Yeah. So what you do is make sure that when you do this, you do a visual clap on camera, so that way you can hear the sound on the audio clip and you can see the visual on the video clip, and you can match them up that way.
Right.
So I mean that's what they do in Hollywood and all that sort of thing. That's why they have that clacker.
Yeah, and here's the thing, right? When it comes to Audacity, Zach, so you got yourself a new mic, which that's cool, but you're still gonna want to use Audacity to clean out the background noise. I'm gonna do a video tutorial on how to use Audacity, after this. And essentially, it's very easy. It's free. Just also remember what you title your audio tracks. Other than that, I think you'll be okay.
Yeah, because I use that to record my music.
Yeah.
The Audacity.
Yeah.
Now the stream's gonna go to shit.
It's okay. We got the cold ham sandwich here. How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah. Okay. So in this stream, we're talking about left versus right. What's left wing? What's right wing? So yeah, that's kind of the basis of this discussion.
Reading like cancerous comments from Zach's video.
Zach made a response to Bering, and Bering replied his video with a video, and Bering's fans have been dripping with retardation up in his comment section with no actual arguments. So
they've got their mouths full of like a bear dick. It's like they're sucking on their, like, I can just see them spitting at their computer screens, like fully spurting out. Like
it's the how dare you attack our cult leader.
Yeah.
That's
But how sad of a person are you when someone makes a video criticizing some person you like, you go off on a hate mob on them? That's just
He doesn't care who he does it to. He does it to a lot of people. He even does it to just commentators. He will make a full video about a guy with blue hair that makes a comment about him.
Yeah. Like I watch and pay attention to a lot of YouTubers that I really like Sargon of Akkad, TJ Kirk, a whole bunch of others. I never once, went to Christy Winter's channel or Steve Shive's channel and bitched at them. I don't even know what their fucking channels are called anyway.
Well, by their names with those two,
yeah.
Steve
Okay.
I'm actually a patron on both of them.
I'm not surprised, but I mean, like you said you like them, so it doesn't surprise me that you'd be supportive of them on Patreon. I'm not trying to like insult you or anything.
Yeah, but I mean, he said he was on the far left, so.
I can't afford anyone on Patreon.
Yeah. So, Colton Ham, what do you define as left or right wing? Because we've kind of discussed what is far right in Humane's opinion is anarcho-capitalism. Some people think
he's a communist.
Some people think far right means authoritarian right, Nazism, fascism, things like that.
Well, I really don't know how you would define left or right. I guess I guess left wing tends to be more focused towards more social elements, more you know what will benefit society as a general. Where I guess the right is focused more on the individual self. What's the like pull yourself up by your bootstrap, but the actual term for that.
Yeah. Did you say at one point that communism and socialism is like an authoritarian left type thing, and that libertarian left is like more of a mixed economy? Because you're in you've said you're in favor of a mixed economy.
I'm not only in favor of a mixed economy. I think a mixed economy would work the best.
I'd agree with that.
So you're on the libertarian left, Ham.
Yeah,
right?
I'm very far left, but I'm also very libertarian.
Yeah.
Hey, can I say something real fast? Obviously, when you say there's a mixed economy, it also depends on how mixed you want the economy to be.
How mixed are we talking? Like, is it like 50-50, or does it like swing one way or the other?
It's fluid. It's like being gender fluid.
Well, I guess it comes down to a couple of things. I believe the government should take care of the things where the profit motive would be detrimental to society, such as healthcare, or where infrastructure would be so costly and difficult to maintain that you would either have to have an absolute monopoly of a private corporation or just have the government do it and take care of it, such as roadworks and water, the electrical grid, and maybe even arguably broadband.
I agree. I think broadband internet needs to be a utility, but with the stupid FCC vote.
So some random geek, Lonely Wolf, and Cult of Ham are on the libertarian left. The rest of us are on the libertarian right. All right.
We're at war now. I'm kidding.
I think we can all agree that the people who believe in the authoritarian side of the left and the right are just complete fucking out of it.
Yes, I strongly agree.
That's where the
Nazis, ethno-nationalists, communists, full-on socialists. Yeah, those people are idiots.
I think
that's where the autism is.
Yeah, I think communism and socialism kind of, in a sense, breed authoritarianism. Because, like, in the sense that you, how can we, like, because whenever I talk to anyone who's like a communist, they sound like an anarcho-communist.
Yeah.
Of it being.
Well, here's the thing about communism and socialism: you have to have an initial stage of extreme authoritarianism before you get to the anarcho part, because no millionaire, no billionaire, hell, no smo fuck like me is gonna give up our property.
Yeah, those are the bourgeoisie.
Yeah. And essentially, whenever I talk to anyone who purports the identity of it, they say, "Oh, communism is stateless or socialism is stateless." That's anarchism. And here's the thing: whenever I argue with somebody, and that wasn't truly communist or socialist, that was state. To me, that was state-owned. Ask me, you son of a bitch.
And anarcho-communism will fail for the exact same reasons anarcho-capitalism will fail. You get one guy with a big enough army to just take over everything.
All right,
Lord of Cancer says he wants to say something.
Go ahead. You got the floor.
Thank you. Have you ever noticed that, whenever in a country where they elect a socialist, they the poor people, they become even poorer? Have you ever noticed that?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
In Argentina.
Communism is a great way of spreading poverty.
Because I noticed that in Argentina, what happened was when Kirchner left office, she basically just destroyed the country. And the poor
Well,
people, they were even
that's the only way of
when they were
making everyone
poor.
equal is make everyone equally poor.
Yeah, I got a question for you.
Which
Is
is-
it true? Is it Lord of Cancer? Is Argentina? Is it true? I don't know if it's either Chile or Argentina, but they have like if a president they serve one term and under the Constitution they're banned from they can't serve 2 consecutive terms. Is that true?
Which one is
I don't know
that?
if that's true. Because I know there's a South American nation where, like, let's say I was elected in 2000.
I think that might be
can't-
Uruguay, though.
Oh, because
I'm
I
sure
thought it was.
that is.
I thought it was either Chile or Argentina, where if I was elected in 2000, I can't run in the 2004 election. I'd have to wait till 2008. And then I think I don't know if I think you can seek a 3rd term, but you can't do it consecutively.
I think
As
it might
for-
be Uruguay, though, because I've noticed that their presidents, they've never had the same person in office once. I mean, not once,
Yeah.
but so I noticed that they're only allowed to serve for a certain time, and if they're out of office, they can't run again. I think that might
Yeah.
be Uruguay, though.
So essentially, I used to be whenever I would argue with communists and shit, I would try and compromise and say, all right, we'll try and mix it, but they wouldn't accept it. They're like, that's not far left enough. And at some point, I literally just replied to a communist. I said, go fuck yourself.
It's not a fucking binary. Like they should treat it like they treat their gender as like a fluid spectrum.
To me, that still is hilarious. But yeah, with their notion of that. But yeah, like the thing is with people, it's like far left or go home. It's like it's not a spectrum. It's not a binary. It's like there's people that are soft left or soft right.
Yeah.
I can definitely agree with like the go far left or go home is definitely a bad strategy. I used to say go far left, but compromise or settle for like the soft left, but still go far left as much as you can. You just like you got to work at it.
Yeah.
It's constant work.
Yeah, the one thing I do want to, although I want to stress to everybody, is if you say you're on the left or the right, I think you should specify if you're on the libertarian or authoritarian side. Zach here, for instance, when he took that political compass test, which I'm not saying is the most perfect thing, it put him like within like a few spaces of the authoritarian right.
It took me borderline.
Yeah, borderline
For some
authoritarian right, but he's like, but he does agree with the idea of libertarianism. Lonely Wolf was quite kind of around where Zach was, but on the libertarian left. So he and Zach are kind of like, they're around the same area, just on different sides of the political spectrum. HUMANe, I don't know where you landed, but I landed.
I landed fairly close to you on the political compass test, so that's why I don't think it's very accurate overall.
To me or Zach?
I've landed very close to where you are. I was a little bit to the right and a little bit further down, but I was like, I was still in the upper left of the bottom right square.
When I took that test, I was hoping to be in the very center libertarian towards the very bottom. But apparently I was the libertarian right in the very middle, the purple.
Oh, you're like in the center. Yeah.
I was
when I first
hoping to be in the center, though.
When I first took the political compass test earlier this year, I was on the center left. And I'm like, all right, I don't really have a problem with being called a leftist or whatever. And then over time, I my politics changed, and I took the test like back in August, and I went a little more authoritarian, and a few spaces to the right. And then, as of November, I've moved a little more to the right, but further down. But yeah, I think that the problem is they don't talk about gun rights. They don't really talk about immigration or foreign. Well, they not really foreign policy. I would definitely like if they would, but I feel like
fuck the authoritarian stuff. That's where all the autistic screeching happens when you go like up.
I think if the political compass introduced immigration or gun rights, that probably pulled me to the right a bit.
And if they could bring in like military spending, I'm in favor of cutting military spending.
Chop it right in half to start.
So am I. Have you seen how many bases we have overseas? I mean,
like over 1,000.
So many of that.
Well, no, we
isn't
have
that
130 countries.
Oh wow, we got all 10 people in a hangout now. So this is literally a full hangout. Fucking cool.
This is the full.
Yeah, sorry about that.
If I said
sorry about me.
You're fine,
earlier.
Hello. Hey, the thing is, I gotta say is that the reason why a lot of times that we are in the a lot of argument people would say that why we have such a massive navy presence around or military presence around the world is that if we stop doing it, another country's going to take it over. Like you remember what happened? We all hear stories about how bad European colonization was in China. How bad European colonization was in Africa, and it was bad. I mean, in the Congo, the Belgians were cutting off the Congolese hands and stuff. They didn't work well enough. You go to like all these other countries, but the thing is that if you look at what's happening now, China, after everybody left, all of these countries went to became independent, and now China is now recolonizing them to an extent. And if you think the Europeans were bad, the Chinese are like, look at the way they treat their animals over there in China. If it moves, it's food, basically.
Hang on a second. Lord of Cancer wanted to continue talking. Go ahead.
I mean, I feel like I have mixed feelings about it. At the same time, I feel like we need, but at the same time, we don't. I mean, we have so many of that. Isn't that enough of the taxpayers' money?
I think with the foreign policy, I think the only times we should ever stick our nose into another country's affairs is if we are under attack or if an ally of ours. Okay, Lord. Okay, wait a second. Cult of Ham says, I want to address what Aspie said after Cancer's done. Okay, but yeah, with a foreign policy, I think I'll say that for another stream to be more in depth about it. But I think HUMANE agrees with me about a non-interventionism. I think, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I am all for taking all military bases that are not in the United States away. I don't want any military bases outside of the United States. I don't want us to get involved in anybody else's politics unless they ask us to come and help them. If they ask us to come and help them, then we can go help them. But from the United States, from Nellis Air Force Base, we can get to anywhere in the world. Like, it's... Yeah. We can get there. I think the F-21 or maybe it was the F-16 could get to anywhere in the world in like a few minutes. It's like 17 to 20 minutes. It's something stupid like that.
So,
but
Ham, you want to respond to what Lord of Cancer said?
No, I want to address what Aspie said about
Oh, go ahead.
About what
Feel free.
What was the point you were making was America has to maintain a large presence, or else someone else will. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, basically China and other countries which are a lot worse than us are going to are going to do that instead.
It's a phenomenon known as the hegemonal power. Like, if one hegemonal power breaks down or pulls back, another one will just take its place.
Okay, Aspie, even if America cuts its military budget to a third of its size, we would still be the most powerful military on the planet, no question. Also,
you don't think we would have to cut anything? You don't think we have to cut anything?
We would have to cut. We would have to cut about 2/3 of our spending. So 2/3 of our military bases, 2/3 of our just 2/3 of everything. And even with that 1/3 left, we would still be the most powerful military on the planet, no question.
Which country would you cut from exactly?
All of them, or as many as possible.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And if we need to get somewhere else, we can always jump from our bases to the bases of our allies, because we do that right now. We go from our military bases to the British military bases to Canadian military bases. So if we needed to get somewhere in the world, like I was looking at the statistics, our planes can get anywhere in the world in 11 hours, and I don't think there's any war that needs us there immediately. So if it's the case where we need to refuel, we just stop off at somebody else's airfield base, refuel, and then keep going to the destination.
I mean, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I'm pretty libertarian as well. I don't want America to be stuck in other people's affairs, but at the same time, it makes me nervous, to think that another country that's probably a lot worse than us is going to do something even worse.
Well, Aspie, here's the thing though, with my foreign policy, how I would do it is, if another nation, let's say for some reason Canada just goes full retard and starts attacking Cuba, for instance.
They haven't already gone full retard? Wait, no.
Well, okay, they have in a sense.
I think they have.
Let's say Canada, for some instance, starts attacking like the UK, and I mean like they start bombing the shit out of the UK as an example. In that instance,
and then they always follow every bombing with sorry.
Here's the thing about being a world hegemon. The world hegemon is not determined by how big your military is anymore. 100 years ago, that was true, but today we are so interconnected. We are so dependent on every other country on the planet that any kind of war will destabilize everything. The biggest factor in determining whether or not you're the world hegemon is how big your economy is. Right now, America is still like
and your cultural influence.
It is still one of the largest or the largest economy in the world, although China is rapidly growing. Which
I think U.S. is number 3.
I agree. I much rather America, a Western liberal democracy, be the world hegemon than a Eastern communist oligarchy or whatever.
Aspie, what I was trying to say with foreign policy, what my idea would be, if an ally of ours is attacked, we will intervene. Or if a nation that's too small to defend itself is attacked, we'll intervene. But the U.S. if I were the president, we would we just mind our own business. We will interact with other nations, yes, but we will not force nations to go along with our politics or whatever. If for instance, let's say we stop doing trade embargoes on Cuba, which, I mean, I think the United States has every right to refuse to do service with other countries on the grounds of their economic system. But if, let's say, but I would say...
Order human rights system.
Huh? I don't know.
I think it's human rights violations.
Yeah. Human rights violations, yeah.
Embargoes is a human rights violation? Is that what you're saying?
Embargo countries for human rights violations, which I think we should.
Yeah, I strongly agree with the embargoes for human rights violations. If a country decides to head to communism, as much as I would strongly disagree with them doing it, I wouldn't put embargoes on them. I mean, if the U.S. decides to do so, I think they have every right to do so. However, I personally wouldn't.
The diplomatic solution should come before the military one.
Yes, yeah. I would only. The only time we should ever stick our nose into other people's businesses is to defend ourselves or our allies or nations that are too small to defend themselves. Other than that, we would mind our own business. I would cut the military budget by. Some people say in half. I think it's a little much. I'd say at least 40%. I think we could still kick ass at 40%, at 60%.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, we could still kick ass at a third.
I would say if we just focused on fraud, waste, and abuse, we could cut the military budget in half and still have the same military capabilities we do right now. Yeah, there is a massive amount of overbloated spending in the military, and this is one of the main reasons that I had
wasn't
to
there
leave.
A report that when it investigated waste in the Pentagon or in the military, that was scrapped because they found like $150 billion worth of waste?
I mean, it gets to the point where there's so much fraud, waste, and abuse that they just kind of, it's part of the system. And this is something
it's part of the industrial military complex and stuff like that. The one thing that like Dwight D. Eisenhower warned about as his final speech before he left office, that like if you don't be concerned about that or pay attention to it, we're just going to keep on building military weapons and vehicles and stuff like that without the use for them and stuff like that.
But it's not just that. So this is something from the inside. Why are we still
building tanks when we have a military base outside of Reno, Nevada, with 3,000 Abrams tanks just sitting in mothballs?
It's because each congressman will put up a bill so that there will be a military factory or jobs in their district that can like build whatever they decide they can build and stuff like that. And because congressmen have to run for re-election every 2 years and stuff like that, they're incentivized by doing that, and that's part of the problem.
And
yes, have a solution for that, honestly.
Mitt Romney gave me inspiration to be as non-interventionist as possible because in 2012 he said, and I quote, "I will advocate for overwhelming American military superiority. I will insist on a military so powerful no one will ever think of challenging it." And when you think about it, we spend way more than our other allies combined.
Yep.
It's like, what would you want at that point? Death Star? I mean, I can somewhat understand the case of our enemies, but allies is insane. It's like, what would one want at that point? Like a Death Star or something? With how
turn the moon into the Death Star.
Yeah. So this is what.
No, just get a Death Star battering ram.
So if you look at spending, we spend more than the top 30 countries combined. But what are we getting out of that is not equivalent to what we're spending, because we're spending stupidly. They're spending smart. And I would say this is what I was going into. So I was in the military myself. And this is something that I saw constantly. And when I talked to people in contracting, they said that their hands were tied, and this is what they had to do legally. So legally, when they're building buildings or when they're building new infrastructure for a base, they have to go with the lowest bidder. Now, this happened 3 times on the base that I was on, and I was on a very small base. So there was 3 different buildings that were either being reconstructed and 1 building that was built from the ground up. And what happened is that building ended up costing 3 times what the initial bid was. It took an extra 1.5 years, and they did it wrong, so that way when the building was completed, they had to do reconstruction after the fact with a completely new company on a completely new bid. And that's how they had to do it because of the way the contractor set up. They had to go with that contractor who had a terrible reputation but bid the lowest and ended up costing 3 times what it was supposed to cost. And also, it wasn't up to what they didn't even fulfill the entire contract. And yet the military paid them 3 times what they were supposed to pay for that project. Yeah. The other thing that happens a lot is budgets are fixed. So if your organization has a $40 million budget for the year of 2012 or whatever, and at the end of the year of 2012 you still have 3 or 4 million left over, you will see people buying stupid crap in bulk in October. You will see a massive amount of spending in October because that's the end of the fiscal year. So people will buy random crap that they don't need because if you go under budget the next year, so if you had a $40 million budget and you were $4 million under in 2012, in 2013, guess what? You're getting $36 million. If you go under again, well, guess what? Next year you're getting that under amount. So what organizations will do is they will spend a lot in September and October to make sure that they don't go under budget, to make sure that they're as close to last year's budget as possible, so that way they don't lose any money. And oftentimes what will happen is they'll go over budget. And what that does is next year they get more money to spend on stuff.
How would you fix that, in your opinion?
I don't know how you fix the latter problem. I know how you fix the former problem, because the former problem is the going with the lowest bidder as opposed to the bidder with the best reputation. That's apparently something that is government-wide and not just in the military. There's legal there's acts of Congress that input that. Which that to me, because you think about what you do at your house, do you always go with the lowest bidder? Because you get what you pay for, right? If somebody's charging something that's too good to be true, it is. But yet the government is set up so that way we have to kind of insist, oh, this guy bid the lowest. Obviously, they're gonna do the job that we want at the lowest cost. That's fucking ridiculous. You get what you pay for. Exactly. Yeah. So they should be able to let out contracts based on reputation plus bid, not bid alone. The second factor is a little harder because that's something, again, that's probably government-wide as opposed to just the military, where the way to fix that is to have proposed budgets from each organization on how much they're going to need for the next year, and then base how much they're given based off of that, as opposed to, oh, last year you spent $40,000, well, next year you get $40,000. That's fucking stupid. It's not.
Yep.
Proposed budgets. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, quality over
like
quantity,
the show The Office, where they get a budget surplus, and they have a whole episode deciding what to do with it. And all right, and if you don't use it by the end, it all gets wasted. It's kind of similar to that.
Yeah,
I guess,
it's that exact same phenomenon, and that happens. So when I'm talking about organizations, my base was a very small base. It wasn't even a full-fledged base. It was an annex to a larger military base. So it was Maxwell Gunter. So it's Maxwell/Gunter Annex is actually the name of the base I was on. Because Maxwell is the main base, Gunter is the annex. Anyway, that one base by itself had 17 or 18 different units. And each of those units has its own budget like this. And all 17 of those are going over, are doing that budget surplus spending at the end of the year. Maxwell was the bigger base, and I think they had something like 200 organizations. You're thinking, if a small base is spending ridiculously, and in a larger base, it's got to be even more abundant there, where people are overspending on crap they don't need. Like, in my personal experience for my unit, what people were doing is they would buy $1 million programs because they're trying to, like, oh, hey, this seems kind of useful. Let's spend $3 million on this for the licensing for the entire base. And then they go around being like, okay, we need to start using this in our different applications because we spent $3 million on this program. We better fucking use it. Otherwise that looks bad on them and it comes back in the audit. So they're going around looking for places to use it. And in my particular program, I was like, we already have that. We built one ourselves from the ground up to do exactly what you bought this program to do. So now we're replacing we're replacing our program that we built from the ground up with your commercial off-the-shelf program that we don't have control over. We have full control over the program we built ourselves. That's why we built it ourselves. And now we're replacing our custom program with their program that is, it does the same job, but it's not flexible, which is why we built our own. It's cookie cutter, and now we're locked in, and we have to build it. We have to do so many things according to what their program tells us we have to do. The other thing is we can't access the source code, which we could do in our own custom program. So every time there's a change that we need to be a change we need made for our specific program, we got to go to the vendor and pay them more money, so that way they can change their program so it's more specific to us. That happened. That was my unit's experience, and that was one of 17. This happened, and this is happening 17 other times on base in different programs, and it's happening 200 other times on Maxwell, and this is happening however many other times in the entire military. They spend money on things they don't need, and because they spent that, and because they bought it, they have to use it, and it ends up slowing down the entire process and costing more money in the long run as well. So it's rampant, and I saw this, and I was trying to tell people, what they could do to fix this sort of thing, and, obviously, low man on the totem pole, nobody listened to what I said, so so I was like, you know what, I can't participate in this, I gotta go. So it's one of the huge factors in my leaving.
It sounds like the military is, and the government in general is in serious need of massive systematic reform.
Yeah.
It'd probably take decades to fix.
Unfortunately,
that's probably why no one ever wants to do it, because it'll take years and years to fix.
And the problem is, we'll elect different presidents, they'll have different ways of doing it. Let's say we had a libertarian president do that, because it sounds like something a libertarian president would do. And let's say we elect a Democrat and they would reverse all of that, or they might do that. The only president that I can name off the top of my head that cut a military budget or did anything with the military, is Bill Clinton with cutting the military budget, and then after 9/11, old W just completely reversed that. He did a complete about face with that, and with different presidents with different attitudes about the military and how we would run it. I don't think it would take decades to do, but we would never see it to the end.
Well, so so the thing with the okay, Aspie, go ahead.
I was going to say that I've heard like the reason why I kind of when I hear people go reduce the military spending is it's a stupid reason, but there's this one guy who forgot his name. I think it was called Acronym TV or something, a pretty cringy channel, who said, like, I think he used it to, like, argue that we should cut the military budget in order to create in order to afford to create, what is it called? Minimum, was something called, like, guaranteed income or something, like the government just, like, sends you $15,000 a year.
Basic universal income.
Basic universal income. I am,
or unconditional universal income. One of those two, yeah.
Yeah, I don't really agree with that. I think it would have effects on the work ethic of the people, but at the same time, but I just don't agree with the government just sending everybody $15,000 a year. It's just it seems impractical.
Yeah, well, I'm actually in favor of that. I'm in favor of some kind of basic universal income of some kind in this capitalist society in America that we have now, because if you don't, especially with the tax reform bill that just got passed and something like that, you're not going to have a middle class, or the bottom class are just going to be too poor in order to, like, buy anything, let alone live and stuff like that, which is why I'm in favor of, like, the basic necessities of life, housing, food, and healthcare. And those for there to be a public option for those things. For if you are a citizen, here you go, you get this and stuff like that as a basic human right.
Can I ask you a question? With welfare, we kind of have that with welfare, but I have one more thing. Would you be in favor of a law from Mississippi that they created a law in order to get, like, a certain type of government entitlement or something like welfare? I think it was like food stamps. You are required to volunteer or work for at least 20 hours a week. Would you be in favor of something like that?
I will be favor. I guess I have no problem with that in principle, so long there's also provisions for people who physically cannot work, because there are people like that are disabled, either mentally or physically. So like
disabled are already taken care of. I'm not talking about the elderly or the disabled. I'm talking about your average Joe who can work, who is able-bodied and can work but chooses not to.
I'm not, well, okay, it's considering that someone who is assuming that they are physically able to work, I don't see a problem with, like, that kind of system where it's like you have to, like, required to do, like, or at least asked to do 20 hours of work or something like that a week. Now, I prefer to, like, for the system to ask you instead of requiring you and stuff like that, because that's just my thinking and stuff like that. But also, in my opinion, especially right now, the disabled people are not getting enough to live off of. I know of friends that are constantly asking for, like, money online and stuff like that because they're in dire straits, and their local governments or something like that are not helping them out.
So but still, if you lived in somewhere, if you had welfare, if you to get welfare in order to receive certain benefits or certain forms of welfare, do you believe that you should at least be able, that you should be required? Because I see it like this: if you're going to get money from the government, you should at least be providing something of use to society. You shouldn't just be laying on your back.
I strongly agree with that.
And just being
of course, and you I think there needs to be more tests to be done on the idea of basic universal income and stuff like that, because there are small tests and small studies that have actually been done, and what they found is that, like, it's not the case where, like, people work less, or if they did work less, so in some of those cases where the people work less is either because their mother or new mother and they're going to take care of their baby, or that they're young college-age students and they go back to school or go back to further their education in school and stuff like that. I do not think it's the case where it's like you're just going to create a lot of people that are going to just sit on their ass and do nothing, so like that. And even if that's the case, that there's a certain percentage of people that will just sit on their ass and do nothing, I'm totally fine with there being a certain population of people who would just sit on their ass and do nothing, rather than people starving to death in this country.
Well, that's because it's not your money, so of course you're perfectly fine with it.
I strongly disagree.
You're perfectly fine with people sitting on their butt and taking money from the government because it's not your money, right? It's not your money that they're using.
I strongly disagree with some random geek here. For instance, I'm of the belief that if you have the ability to work, but you choose not to, I think the person deserves to be left to starve. I don't believe in
damn straight.
I believe that lazy people are a burden on society, and that if you have the ability to work and you choose not to, I think society should wash your hands of you.
Yeah.
Now, if you
I
have,
strongly disagree with pandering to laziness as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm working a full-time job every day like that. Why should I be busting my balls for someone who wants to sit on his ass?
Yeah.
Is your
And watch porn and play video games.
Well, one thing I say so what, but on nothing, is that your opinion on the people who are poor now?
Well,
that all they're doing is just sitting their ass and just collecting government checks.
Many of them do have a sense of
Yes.
entitlement and don't want to work.
Yes, I'm also
Yes.
strong against generational welfare.
Well, the question is if any of them, right? If any of them do it, then it's a broken system.
I honestly don't see how it is.
Well, because it's not your money. Right? It's not your money, it's other people's money that is going to those people, right? It's other people's money. Other people are working full-time or 60 hours a week, and their money is going to the people who aren't doing anything. So there are people who sit around doing nothing, right? Is it fair that the people who are working, who are benefiting society, are pulling 60-hour weeks, for them to pay so that some guy can sit on his ass doing nothing for society?
Yeah, after this, I'm going to ask Zach a question, so go ahead, some random geek.
Okay, can I say something?
And yeah, I think Aspie was saying something as well, so let's go random geek, Aspie, and then we'll come back to Ham.
No, I'll go with Ham, and then Aspie, then me.
All right, go ahead.
I haven't done much research or any at all into the idea of a universal income. On the face of it, I'm kind of opposed to it because I believe a welfare system should be for people who are physically or mentally or in some way unable to work. And I believe a able-bodied person who's healthy should go out and find a job. But if there's evidence to show that a universal income does have a net benefit to society, I believe it should be implemented.
Okay.
And also,
go ahead.
Okay. A basic universal income will be a drain on the economy. I mean, we're already $20 trillion in debt. We won't be using our money. It'll most likely be money used from other countries. So we will have to borrow, meaning that we already spend so much. We don't need to add on top of that. Giving every person.
If we did United States reforms, there wouldn't be much to add. It wouldn't increase the deficit hardly at all. If anything, it would help prevent. It would help. It would stimulate the economy because these people who would otherwise be jobless, be spending $0, they'd be spending, whatever they take home from the government, and they'd be putting that into the economy.
Okay, but that being a stimulus, I don't think. But also on top of that, the basic universal income, also to pay for that, the government would have to heighten taxes way up. That would make it more expensive. That would make it harder for certain businesses to hire people, and therefore you would have less overall. You'd have more people stuck on government government subsidies.
How much would it increase taxes?
Okay, there's actually something about this, but let's go to some random guy, and then I'm going to suggest a video that you guys watch after this.
Summer and Geek first of all, but Summer and Guy, it's kind of, that has happened to me before. But actually, if we're going to talk about like a video and stuff like that, Democrat and Socialist 01 all did a video. I should probably find it and post it in the group chat list. About like the welfare state, and like in his research on the welfare state, it was actually an idea done by capitalists essentially, and they created that program in order to appease the poor and the underclass so that they didn't like revolt against them and took them over and stuff like that, and which allows the fascists at the time in order to take over the government and stuff like that. But onto the point, the way I see it is like the society I like to see in the future, or at least if not in my lifetime, in the next lifetime and stuff like that, is where people will do to use their talents that they have, whether talents as writing or art or anything like that, in order to give some kind of gift to like society or something like that, and give something to someone else, and kind of like a gift economy and stuff like that, and for the things that you want as opposed to the things you need. The things you need will be taken care of by the government as it should be, as I personally think it should be, and stuff like that. And so with a basic universal income, they'll allow more people to be able to further their education, and so we'll get. I think there will be a generally higher level of education or a higher level of an informed populace with a basic universal income. So because then they don't have to worry about money when they get college debt or anything like that, or if there's college debt and everything like that.
Well,
So,
college debt's a whole other thing, because I think that the whole college debt thing is caused by the government subsidizing student loans. Why the government's doing that, I don't know why. It's like they think that they're going to discriminate against people based on race or gender, which is not actually
But let's not get off that whole other tangent, because I still think we need to talk about the universal basic income. So before we get, and I'll let Loudmouth go after me.
And plus, on principle, can I say one last thing? On principle, based on a basic principle, you don't have a right for me to handle your problems. I'm me, you're me. You don't have a right to my money for your. Other than that, listen, if somebody close to me is having problems or stuff, I'm happy to help them out any way I can. But some person I don't know anything about, I don't know if he's a drug addict or an alcoholic, you don't have a right for me to handle your problems. It's just as simple as that.
I would like to help. I like to be there for everyone else, to help everyone else, and I wish that everyone would do the same, so that we all collectively can have a good life and a good society that we live in. We're all in this together.
Jonathan, I'm fine with helping people. It's just lazy people. I'm willing to leave them to the curb.
Well, here's the thing: if there's evidence that it shows that a universal income does have a net benefit to society, as in it improves the economy, improves standard of living, what's the argument against it other than some libertarian objection?
Okay, the arguments against it. So let me just some random geek was correct. The universal basic income was advocated by Friedrich Hayek. I don't know if you know, that name rings a bell, but he is one of the founders, or one of the key Austrian economists. However, he put the stipulation, and thank you for linking that. I will check that out. That is apparently the pro-universal basic income video, right?
I'll take a look at it. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's a video on like the welfare state as done by the Crown Socialist.
Okay. So so I suggest everybody look at that, and because for every issue we should be looking at both sides. And hey, maybe I'm wrong about this, but this is my understanding because I have read a lot about economics. And so what Hayek suggested is the universal basic income to provide for the basic needs. However, he stipulated that that can be the only welfare program. It has to replace all other welfare programs. So no Social Security, no WIC, no Medicare, no Medicaid. All of that goes out the window. Nothing except universal basic income. Because if you have anything on top of that, the entire system will crumble. You cannot have Medicare on top of universal basic income. You cannot have a universal healthcare system on top of universal basic income. It's too financially burdensome. And so I'm going to link
it won't.
So you can say no, it won't. Okay. You can say no, it won't. But think about this. Okay, so this is something, there's a video from My 2 Cents when he's talking about the universal basic income. And the point he makes in that video is there's a study that says if we had a universal basic income of $10,000 per person in the United States, so per adult in the United States, $10,000 a year for everyone in the United States. If we taxed every person 100% of their income if they make more than $1 million, we will not be able to afford that. We cannot afford $10,000 a person if we tax everybody who makes over $1 million 100% of their income. Now, if you talk about, so that's just the universal basic income. That's not talking about our military spending, our spending on infrastructure, our spending on Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, all of these other programs. We can't even afford a universal basic income of $10,000 a year for the people in the United States if we have a 100% tax rate for over $1 million. And that's so the rest. And if you
How
look
many
at the
millionaires are there?
okay, if you look at the percentage of what millionaires pay for the actual budget, it's something. Oh, I got to bring up the actual charts of this. But everybody who makes over $1 million pays like 80% of the government's budget right now.
How much
It is ridiculous.
in taxes? Because people argue that millionaires are taxed. But people argue whether or not the rich are taxed too much.
Yeah. So let me look up this chart. There's
the
a chart
rich are
that
not taxed.
I'll be right
They're
back.
not taxed enough.
No. Look at the chart of how much of the government is paid for by millionaires. It's insane how much they actually pay.
Okay.
Well, if they earn 90% of the money, they should pay 90% of the tax.
They do not earn 90% of the money.
That was just a number that I threw out.
Yeah. I think like 1% of the nation owns 30% of the tax burden.
Well, how much do they make? How much of the GDP do they make?
Quite a bit.
Well, what percent?
Let me look it up.
Anyway, Zach, while we're here, I wanted to ask you, what is your stance on the military and foreign policy while these guys are looking at this shit?
I
just want to point this out. America has effectively the second lowest corporate tax rate in the world.
Those are corporations, not individuals.
Second.
Yeah, and I guess what rich people can do now with Trump's new tax plan? They can file as a corporation.
Yeah. Look at. Oh, all right. I'm looking up the stats here. The top 1% of all taxpayers, all right, have 20.58% of all income, but pay 39.48% of all federal income taxes.
Where did you find that information, Loudmouth? If you can screenshot.
Taxfoundation.org.
All right, I'll take a look at that after the stream. So Zach, while we're here, I was going to ask, what's your stance on like the military and foreign policy?
Well, as I said earlier, I said that diplomatic solutions should come first before military action. I used to view it from quite a black and white standpoint, but HUMANE Mind and everyone else here bringing up the issue of there being waste, and I just got done glazing over a Forbes magazine article that was talking about the waste that is in the military. I think one of them was like about some cruiser off of Maine or something, and then another one was off of a wasted ship project, or trying to remember exactly what it was. I would have to like look.
Hell, you could just point out the F-35 fighter project.
Yeah, wasn't there? Yeah, there was a I don't know if it was a plane or a jet.
I think it's a fighter bomber combination or some kind of new fighter.
And it's not even used, ain't it? It's like it's just sitting there collecting dust.
I think they just got it able to fly after spending like $1.5 trillion on it.
Yeah.
At that point,
that's an embarrassing waste of money. I heard about that.
Yeah.
I remember also
for some reason that wasn't the first ones. One of the first ones that more Forbes mentioned. I don't know why that would be.
Yeah, but I would.
That'd be the first one I'd go to.
Yeah, I would be cutting the military's budget by a fuck ton at that point. Like you wasted $1 trillion on this jet that didn't even fucking fly. That to me is an embarrassment, and I would start like butchering that budget until like what they actually need, not by because at that point it's like an embarrassment. And you know.
Here's a specific example that I was trying to bring up a little earlier from Forbes. The grossly excessive littoral combat ship LCS program. The LCS is a Navy ship meant to be able to sail close to shore. It has had several negative reports by the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, and one of the newest LCSs broke down at sea in December. Nonetheless, Hostel USA just announced an award within a $3.5 billion LCS contract. So the LCS program is still funded, even though the Secretary of Defense is trying to cut the program back. So that was the example that I was trying to mention specifically. Oh, yes. And here's the other example, Maine's destroyer. Again, the New York Times, I would this guy is citing New York Times, so I would be wary. Said it all. A provision which Senator Susan Collins, Republican of Maine, helped secure appropriated an extra $1 billion for a Navy destroyer that is likely to be built at Bath Iron Works in her state. The Defense Department had not requested money for the additional ship in this year's budget. But, so yeah, it's a not so black and white, the whole military spending issue. I think with all the waste that there should be some cut, but also some of that waste should be allocated to some other areas. Like what I hear generally is that our aircraft, that our Air Force is a little bit behind the times. It's we're using older bombers, like Ham just mentioned there.
Yeah.
What type of bomber was it that you mentioned again?
The F-35 fighter project. That's
Okay,
the
that's a
latest and
fighter,
greatest
never
in
mind.
technology, apparently.
Yeah. Okay, I googled how much do we spend in the military. As of August 29th of 2015, we apparently spend $601 billion, which is more than the next 7 highest spending countries combined. Let's see. According to Business Insider, 198.7 billion is spent on operations and maintenance. 135.2 billion is spent on military personnel. 90.4 billion is spent on procurement, and the next 63.5 billion is spent on research and development, and 1.2 billion is spent on resolving and managing funds, which or revolving and managing funds. Yeah, I think that's what it says. But yeah, like what HUMANE asked was, what do we get out of it, like to make the spending worth it?
Well,
yeah.
that's something I was gonna bring up when I was talking about all of the overspending that happens in the military. The main reason they're able to do that is because they don't have a customer base. They have guaranteed income in the funds in the way of taxing. They have a way to guarantee that they always get their budget because it goes through Congress. So if the military asks for $20 billion, well, then Congress is going to give them $20 billion. And where does that come from? It comes from taxpayers. It comes from the tax econ. If it doesn't come from taxpayers, then it comes from the government borrowing money to pay the military. In which case, that's indirect inflation of the economy. Or it comes from the government printing money to pay for the military. So anyway, all three ways is actually affecting the taxpayers. And if this was a private organization, they would be bleeding money every year if they had their budgets the way our military is run. If there was a private company, it would, if it kept up these business practices, it would go under. Which is but because it is the government and it's funded by taxpayers or inflation or borrowing from other countries, there's no way to stop the overspending. There's nothing to keep that in check.
There is plenty of ways to stop the overspending. It's called getting rid of the corruption.
How does that happen when it has never happened in the history of anything the government has done?
It can't.
Because no one's ever tried.
That's the thing. In order to
no one's ever tried
in order to, in all seriousness, in order to actually counteract the military industrial congressional complex and stuff like that, like in the article that Zach mentioned, it was that particular representative that voted for a factory to be in her district so that it can give her constituents jobs, essentially like that. So in order to for what system we have now, in order to counteract the industrial military congressional complex, we have to vote in representatives that said, we're not going to do it anymore. We're not going to do any more military spending. We're not going to build any more military factories that we don't need and stuff like that. You have to vote. You have to vote those people in and saying we're not doing this anymore in order to counteract that.
How many of those people get voted in?
I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know.
How many of those people?
One thing.
Well, how many of those people actually win the nomination? Hillary was a war hawk. Trump was a war hawk. Nobody else had a chance of winning.
That's a presidential list.
If you're talking about senators and all that sort of thing, the senators who are anti-government spending, do they get elected? No, they do not.
They might.
Rand Paul got elected.
Are you guys
Paul,
suggesting we should
Bernie?
we should be saddled with this as just a way of doing things?
I'm saying that's a problem. That's an inherent flaw in government, which you want more of.
It's not inherent. It's an inherent flaw when you have private corporations giving donations to politicians.
I have a question for you, Ham. Are you in favor of something like I don't know how if there's an actual term for this, like a restraining order where we keep the corporations and our politicians, like it's like a restraining order type thing where we keep them.
It's called campaign finance reform.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I have no problem with it.
The first step is to reverse a Supreme Court decision in the 1970s that said money is free speech. No, money is not free speech.
It's not speech. How the hell?
I thought you're talking about Are you talking about Citizens United? That was like a few years ago.
No, the 1970s.
There
was a Supreme Court case in the 1970s where all this shit started. It made money speech. No, money is not speech.
It's a way of spending things. I honestly.
Yes, it is. Money's a way of promoting your speech. Okay.
But we have that in our system, in our political discourse, and it's like a might makes right society is the people with the biggest cash that can have the most influence.
Well, here's the thing.
And that means it's the 1% is the rich.
Can I say something? Can I say something?
Can I say something not retarded?
Oh, all right. Anyway, when it comes to money and politics, there's two types. There's hard money and then there's soft money. Hard money is money that's given directly to the candidate. Soft money is money that is given to the party so they can help the candidate. In federal law, it is illegal to directly give a candidate over $10,000 to give a candidate more than $10,000. It's illegal. But with soft money, it's unlimited. And the reason why what that took away Citizens United, what it did is it basically took away a corporation's ability, the government's ability to limit it takes away the government's ability to limit to take away a corporation's power of giving soft money. Just because somebody was a member of a corporation.
Oh my God! Learn how to speak, Aspie.
You're doing fine, Aspie. I was able to follow along.
Anyway,
more specifics about that case. It was about a movie made by a group called Citizens United that was opposing Hillary Clinton, and supposedly that movie ran afoul of certain campaign finance laws that were signed into law by the Bush administration, under a bill known as McCain-Feingold, okay? And the Supreme Court ruled that since this movie was essentially an act of political speech, that restricting it from being released violated the First Amendment of the Constitution. And it did.
Yes.
Interesting.
I think the Supreme Court case that I'm talking about is Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976.
I've heard of that. Yeah, that had to do with soft money. Yeah, I remember that case.
Campaign finance.
I will say this: in the case, I personally, I don't see how money is speech. I did my mic cut out for my audio cut out, so I couldn't.
Are you there, Espen?
Yeah.
Whois.com.
Yeah, but essentially, I don't believe that. I don't buy that the notion that money is speech. By the way, Aspie, I don't know, your webcam's freaking out on you. For a second.
It was lagging.
Yeah, and it was also like very grainy. I don't know if you lowered your bandwidth on your end of the hangout.
Yeah, I did because it was having problems when I was one day and I lowered the bandwidth and it went away. So.
Yeah, I just turned my webcam off because my computer's being spastic sometimes. But yeah, I don't see the notion how money is necessarily speech. I don't see the harm in keeping like a restraining order type effect between corporations and our politicians. And this notion of voting people out a lot, voting them out is usually I hear this among the Democrats. What their plans are. Oh, we need to vote the Republicans out. Which if you don't like Republicans, you might agree with the idea. If you like Republican, I don't know if anyone here is a Republican. I know Zach is a registered Republican, but I think he might. I don't know if Zach is if he'll change that to. I think you said you would at some point, or you want to become like a registered libertarian.
Yeah, I probably would for 2020, just so that I could maybe get a third-party candidate that I would actually like nominated to run against Trump and whoever the heck that goes running the Democratic platform, like freaking what was it, Howard Schultz or whatever.
Yeah, at least Hillary's not running again. But the thing is,
she's trying to. She's trying to.
I bet she will always try to. Yeah.
But well, actually, can I say something? I found the Buckley versus Vallejo. It says first it held that restrictions on individual contributions to political campaigns and candidates did not violate the First Amendment, since limitations of the FICA enhance the integrity of our system of representative democracy by guarding against unscrupulous practices. Second, the court found that governmental restriction of independent expenditures in campaigns, the limitation on expenditures by candidates from their own personal or family resources, and the limitation on the total campaign expenditures did violate the First Amendment, since these practices do not necessarily enhance the potential for corruption that individual contributions to candidates do. The court found that restricting them did not serve a governmental interest great enough to warrant a curtailment on free speech and association.
Okay, so hang on a second. I said that we were going to limit ourselves on this stream to an hour and a half, and it's been almost 2.5 hours.
Okay, let's keep going. Never mind.
Okay, let's we've gotten way off topic and talked about a bunch of different things.
Right, sorry.
But
yeah,
I do want to kind of wrap this up because this has already gone on way too long, and I don't want another 3 or 4 hour long stream on my channel. Thanks everybody for coming out. I think everybody made a bunch of good points. If you're in the chat, there are a bunch of links on the side from different perspectives and all that sort of thing. There is the breakdown of the taxes, which I did want to get into. So
I'd also like to point out that this is probably the first hangout that me and HUMANE were in where it wasn't a one-on-one battle between us.
I'm happy to join in. Thanks for Man for inviting me. And
thanks for coming.
I did have fun on this hangout.
All right. So I just wanted to point out.
Zach, what?
Okay.
I kind of wish that we would have touched on a little bit more of Bering's hypocrisy on doxing.
If you want to
talk about that.
Yeah, we can have a separate stream for that. Sorry, I wanted to include that, but this is too big of a topic to. All right, so so for my conclusion or whatever, so there is the individual versus the collective. At least that seemed to be the universal understanding of what the left is and what the right is. So the left is all about the society as a whole, whereas the right tends to be the individual is we should focus on individuals having the maximum freedom.
There is no minority smaller than the individual.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good stance. And part of that, so in order to achieve the success of society, I don't know how you can have that without a larger government. To me, that seems like a contradiction. It seems a little short-sighted where you think we can have the society all provided for without some kind of authoritarian system to ensure that society is provided for. Which is why I think, this is why I state the anarcho-capitalist is as far on the right as you can get, because it is a system where there is absolutely no authority over the individual other than what those individuals will allow to be placed on themselves. Everything is voluntary. It's all voluntary interactions between people, and if you choose not to interact with somebody, there's nothing forcing you to give up your money to a certain corporation or forcing you to interact with somebody that you don't like, or forcing you to do anything that you don't want to do. So that's why I think that is the correct position.
It's also a system I don't think will work.
Yeah, I understand that. I think that there's a lot of problems with it, and it may fail completely. In which case, I have minarchism as a backup. But I did want to break down the tax brackets here because this is some Pew Research. I don't know if Pew Research, from my understanding, is not right or left. So this is the 2015 individual income tax breakdown. So people who earn $2 million or more shared 20% of the income taxes paid that year. Those who earned $500,000 or more, or to $2 million, paid 17.9%. Those who paid $200,000 to $500,000 paid another 20.6%. Those who earned $100,000, $200,000 paid 21.7%. So everybody who earns more than $100,000 a year paid 78% of all income taxes in the United States for 2015. That, like, I'm in that category of the 100,000 or more. I don't know who else is in the stream, but that means
Not me, man. You earn over 100 grand now.
Yes, as of this year. Or it might be slightly. It might be slightly under this year.
I'm probably like around 36,000 this year.
So everybody who earns less, everybody who earns less than $10,000 a year in 2015 paid less than 20% of the annual income or annual tax revenue for the U.S.
Wait, less than 100,000 or less than 10,000?
No, less than 100,000. So everybody who earned less than 100,000, you paid less than 20% of the annual budget. So looking at this chart, if we taxed people who earned more than $1 million, 100% of their income, like that group already encompasses 30% or 37% of our annual tax revenue income. So that is pretty ridiculous when you come out to taxing and how we pay for things. It's
I still think the burden of like the taxes should be on the people who make the most. That more taxes is not going to hurt them as much. I'm not advocating for 100% taxing them. No.
You mean things taxation is theft, right?
Yes.
I do not think taxation is theft.
Yeah, taxation is not theft.
Maybe we can discuss that.
We'll talk about that. Okay, that's what I'm saying. That'll be next week's stream. We'll talk about is taxation theft and the arguments for and against. I think that's a pretty good segue into that. Does anybody else? So those were my closing remarks, and that's why I don't think because of the breakdown of the budget. Like, it seems impossible for me, or implausible, that we could have a system that is sustainable where you're providing all these services for people, for society, when right now anybody who earns over $100,000, you're paying 80% of the United States taxes.
Yeah, I would think just like to close the government loopholes and tax loopholes to allow people like Donald Trump to not have to pay a lot of taxes. Like
they're already paying 80% of the U.S.'s tax budget.
No, there are a lot of tax breaks and tax deductions that you can get for real estate. If you own real estate, you can just not have to pay as much taxes.
You don't understand what I'm saying.
There was a video that a millionaire did. I'll have to find it. But he did a breakdown of the taxes he paid. Like on average, he paid 15 to 20% taxes, where some were
for a millionaire.
Where if you have a doctor who made that same amount of money that year, he'd pay something like 35%.
Okay. Well, so, if you break it down, 100% of a $10,000 or $20,000 a year income is less than 1% of a $20 million income. It's right.
Well, what's that got to do with everything?
It's you're looking at percentages. 20% of a millionaire's income. That's still 20% million. It's 200,000 a year, right?
Yes.
200,000 a year, that's more than the entire income of 10 people who make 20,000 a year.
And
that one person is covering more than 10 other people who earn less than 20,000 a year.
But he's paying less in taxes overall.
Because you're looking at percentage instead of gross, what they're adding to the budget. If you look at percentage, of course, well, if the 1% of 1 million, okay, Donald Trump's a billionaire, right? So 1% of his $1 billion is still 100 million, which is more than I don't know how much of society combined. That's a huge.
I don't care how much in gross you pay in taxes.
Well, that's the problem. You don't care how much in gross. You only care about a percentage. So you think that somebody who earns $1 billion should pay 80%, in which case that is more than 90% of the U.S.
A person who's making just above minimum living wage and he's paying 10% taxes, that's a greater burden on him than a millionaire paying 90% in income taxes.
I agree.
Okay, so it's a greater burden. So the issue
It's greater
is
burden than that individual.
Yes.
Hey, I thought
the issue is not what is a greater burden, but what is fair. Yeah, so we are wrapping this up. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We're getting
I
off
believe
on a whole new
progressive
tangent.
tax system is the most fair position.
Okay, yeah, we're getting into the taxes, our tax fair, and all that sort of thing. Sorry,
All right,
guys. Let's see. Does anybody else have any other topic they want to talk about, left versus right, in order to wrap this up? We'll wrap this up. We're 5 to 10 minutes.
Can I say something? Can I say
yeah.
one word? Can I show my topic? I just want to know all your opinion. I know this is going to be kind of a weird thing to bring up, but my next video is going to be on the topic of pit bulls, on whether they're more dangerous dogs or not. What do you guys think?
Pit bulls are not dangerous.
It's like that.
They're cute.
They're not dangerous. The only way they can be dangerous is how you raise them.
I don't have any strong
right.
opinions on that. I'll be actually looking forward to learning about that, whether or not if that's true or not. For right now, I don't think that's necessarily true, and I think it's all up into the owners and stuff like that. But I'm open-minded.
Yeah, I honestly don't care and don't really know.
Okay, anything about left versus right that we did not touch on?
If you raise them right.
Oh.
We're trying to wrap up here.
Yeah. Okay. So that was okay. That was a completely off topic. Okay. So the other thing we didn't talk about that I wanted to talk about is the alt-right really on the right? So we're only going to spend about 5 minutes on this topic. So this should be the final.
Right. Okay. My statement is the alt-right on the right. Well, if they're obviously if you're in favor of capitalism, I think you're to the right. Obviously, if you're like an ANCAP, but you have all these alt-right type beliefs, maybe that's just an example. Maybe you could be on the right and alt-right. However, I tend to view the alt-right as more authoritarian, as that they don't really seem to be in favor of anarchism.
Yeah, I agree with
that. I mean, it's not necessarily a rule, but more of a trend. Obviously, it's for instance, atheists tend to lean to the left. That doesn't mean they have to be, or vegans tend to lean to the left. That doesn't mean they have to. So there may be some ANCAPs who have some alt-right-ish type beliefs, but it's not
okay, so we're talking about the alt-right, not ANCAPs who lean alt-right.
No, I'm just as an example. That's just an example.
Yeah.
I was just using that as an example.
So use the actual examples of the alt-right. So the poster boy for it is Richard Spencer. I don't know, Millennial Woes is a pretty big figurehead in the alt-right.
Yes.
I can't really think of anybody else who.
The Storm, Wife of the Purpose,
Braving Ruin.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So those are bigger YouTubers, but those aren't people who are known really outside of YouTube. Whereas Millennial Woes has spoken at conferences, and Richard Spencer. Mm-hmm. So if you look at what the platforms that those people endorse and support, they support a social program, right? So they want universal health care, and they want welfare. And all. Yes. So that is the big difference, is they want it just for white people. Now, that seems to me like a leftist perspective, right? Because...
No.
But however...
how is it saying we want it for this... We want this group to have some benefit?
You're trying to shoehorn the alt-right into the left because some of them.
Wait, no. I'm saying I'm trying to figure out how is that a right position to say? We want white people to have this benefit because
hang on a second.
Because isn't Black Lives Matter a left-wing organization?
However, wait a second. Isn't the alt-right in favor of an alternative to mainstream conservatism?
That's what it was supposed to be.
That's what it basically brands itself.
That's what the term alt-right was supposed to indicate.
That was what Richard Spencer coined as well.
Yeah.
He didn't coin it, but he definitely popularized it.
I think he's considered the thought leader of the alt-right as well, from what I heard.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was originally supposed to be an alternative to the neocons and all those sort of things that typically make up the mainstream conservatives. However, I think it's a little more I'm putting out the argument that it's possibly more left than right.
Would you call that an alt-right?
Yeah, bullshit.
Would you call it?
So I made my case saying they are for social programs, which is not a typically conservative point of view. So conservative point of view is more toward, not conservative, people of the right, right? The right perspective. We already said that was more towards individualism, which is the exact opposite of social programs. The more social programs you have, the less individual rights you have, the less of an individual you are. Because you have to be a participant in that social program.
Would you call them alt-left?
they also say this group of people should have these benefits. This group of people, the people based on white culture and white people, should have superior. You know, the U.S. should just be for white people is the common thing that they advocate for. Isn't that how is? I don't understand how that is a perspective on the far right as opposed to more towards the left.
I don't understand where you're getting this idea that the alt-right wants social programs.
Because
I've never heard a single alt-right person say they want, you know, social welfare for just white people.
Did you not listen to Richard Spencer's interview?
Yeah, Richard Spencer did do an interview with Roman millennials, and he did kind of say he's kind of for like the Bernie Sanders kind of like politics and source of systems and stuff like that. But the thing is, and which Roman millennials did not challenge him on, is that he wants that only for white people.
Okay. So how is it only for the white people, not a leftist position?
What the fuck?
Okay.
I take it as more of authoritarian than left or right.
Yes.
No.
How are you going to
Wait.
How is Spencer
calm down.
How is this an authoritarian perspective when he's saying, I want this program, but I want it for white people?
Richard Spencer is for a white ethno state. How can you achieve a white ethno state without?
Okay, that's a separate issue. That's a separate issue. I agree that he is an authoritarian. We're talking about left versus right, not authoritarian versus libertarian. I agree he's a complete authoritarian. I disagree with him on a lot of things. What I'm talking about right now is he's saying white people, which is a group of people. How is that on the right, given that right is for individuals?
What is white people and stuff like that. ContraPoints made a video about this whole white.
No. That's a completely separate topic, dude. I want this group of people to have this privilege or have this ability and have this whatever. How is that different by saying this group of people is a collective? How is that on the right as opposed to a left?
Because the left will want to do it it wants those kind of programs for all people, not just white people, all people.
Okay, here's my counterexample. Is Black Lives Matter on the left or the right?
Black Lives Matter is mostly a left movement, yes.
Wait.
They want because
they're communists. They believe in communism.
Okay, so
it is.
Okay.
Well, I don't have a problem with communism, period, anyway. But Black Lives Matter is looking at systemic racism that is in this country and how, on average, if an police officer shoots a black person, they're not going to see any repercussions, as well as like per capita, black people are shot and killed by police officers.
So they're looking at race.
More likely to be shot by the police.
Okay. That's a separate issue. And again, we're trying to do less than 5 minutes here, but my point is, Black Lives Matter concerns themselves with black people. Like, say this is a category of people.
Because
this is a group.
Hang
on a second. This is a group of people, and we're grouping these people based on race. And these are the privileges that race should have, or these are the things that race should get that they aren't currently getting. How is that on the left when the alt-right is saying, hey, here's a group of people that's based on race. These are the things that they're not getting that we think they should be getting. How can you say that isn't, like, I don't get the distinction here.
It is. White people have so much privilege right now. And
Okay. So
separate issue.
I find it ridiculous.
Okay.
That, like, white people are complaining about
so what I'm saying is both groups are based off of race. If a group is based off of a collective identity of race, isn't that more towards the left than the right?
Black Lives Matter is a response to the police brutality.
That doesn't matter. It's a group of people based on race. It's a group of people based on race.
Hey,
Jonathan, you're missing the context. It's a group. They're groups focusing on race. Black Lives Matter, obviously, because they have the word black in it. Obviously, they focus on black people. That was the point.
So this is they're killed more often by police officers.
Whether the reason doesn't necessarily need to. Go ahead, HUMANe.
I was going to say, so why is the emphasis on, okay, black people are shot more by police officers, right? Why isn't it people are shot by police officers, right? Why are they focusing on one group of people based on skin color? Why isn't it just, hey, this is a group, we're gonna look at white people shot by cops, we're gonna look at black people shot by cops, we're gonna look at Mexicans shot by cops, we're gonna look at Asian people shot by cops. Why isn't it, hey, we're gonna look at all of these, and we're gonna point out every injustice that is, regardless of race.
Because the data shows that black people are killed more often.
Okay.
Period.
So because no. Okay. That's a separate issue.
The data shows that they want to look at like why is that, and they think it is because of of implicit biases that a lot of police officers have, and that goes towards more of a lot of systemic racism that is in this culture.
So there's no getting rid of this, guys.
Can I offer something?
Sure.
Okay. Sure.
I kind of agree and disagree with both HUMANe and Some Random Geek. I would call Black Lives Matter a left-wing organization, not because of the focus on race, but the other left-wing positions that they hold, such as
the alt-right has similar
and socialism.
The alt-right has similar perspectives. They want social programs, the same kind of social programs that Black Lives Matter is asking for. The alt-right just wants those same programs for white people, whereas Black Lives Matter wants those programs for black people. So the only difference between the two groups, from what I can see, as far as what they've asked for and what they're demanding, is one is for white people and one is for black people.
The alt-right still believe in property rights.
Well, how can they if they want a universal basic income and universal housing not universal housing, universal healthcare and universal basic income, which is two positions that Richard Spencer had advocated for.
I don't believe the alt-right believe in that.
Then why would they say it? So you're saying they're lying about their political intentions? Well, then why aren't they lying about their racism?
Always lies.
So then why aren't they lying about their racism?
The term alt-right it almost means nothing.
If you had a platform and you were lying, why wouldn't you lie about the racism as opposed to lying about what you want the society to provide?
You do know that the alt-right has all kinds of different people on the far right. They have Nazis, they have Klansmen.
Okay, that's my argument. I don't think that those are the far right. I think, if anything, those are closer towards the middle.
They are far left.
Okay, because you're just saying that. What is
Klansmen are by definition far right.
Yeah, I agree with that.
By definition,
I would agree that they are more centrist. Okay, but they do lean towards the right.
All right. What makes them the right? What makes them more towards being individuals?
KKK. The Klansmen, because of their traditionalist, conservative values.
Yes. What makes that more towards individualism?
Stupid. But yeah, go ahead, Humane.
So we've talked about left versus right, whereas the right is more towards individualism and the left is more towards collectivism. How does traditional conservative values make them more on the right?
Because that's one of the defining features of the right is the focus on traditional values, where the left is focused on progressive values.
It says that in a left-like video that you showed us, like HUMANe Minds.
We've talked about the left being more towards society as a whole, and the right being more towards individuals.
Yes, left is more progressive, and yet even though Richard Spencer.
You do know that they call it the left and the right, not the individualist versus the collectivist, right?
So basically, everything we talked about in this stream doesn't matter because the entire foundation of our stream is thrown out the window.
1 second.
This was a useless stream because our definition of left and right aren't accurate.
There's people who say socially left wing or socially right wing, economically left wing, economically right wing. Now, when I think of far right, I'm thinking of like the ANCAPs, like the extreme libertarian right.
Which I thought we had established and agreed on until I brought up this subject.
However, there's also, I guess you could say that's the economically far right, in my opinion. Or at least how I mean, if we're going to talk about economics, but in the social aspect, maybe you could say, like, when it comes to social libertarian, authoritarian, the social far right could be like the authoritarian right, or however you want to think about it. But I think this is going to be boiled down to a difference of opinion. I feel like there's still a ton of mistranslation.
No, it's the fact that everybody was in kind of agreement on the definition of the left and the right until I brought up this topic, and so then the definitions aren't applicable and aren't accurate because of this one situation. So it's not this one situation that is wrong. It's our definitions that are wrong.
Straw man the ever living fuck out of me.
Oh, hang on a second. Calm down. You'd say straw man's you a lot, which hang on a second.
Yeah, which he does.
Hang on. In the case if they're in favor of social programs and things that tend to be more to the left, then I don't think you can call them the alt right.
Well, I'm also saying that they are a collective, which is a group of people, isn't it? It's a collective of people. It's not individuals. It's a collection of people based on race.
My question to you, HUMANe, is: would you call them alt left then if they're not if they're not to the right?
No, I don't think that they are quite on the left.
But they're not as right.
I think they are right of center as opposed to far right.
Okay.
So
okay, that makes sense.
What I said the Nazis were center left.
You said they were far.
I think the Nazis are right though.
Wait, you said the Nazis were center left?
I said that Nazis were extremely authoritarian, but they were center left.
Okay.
Some random geek.
I thought you said they were on the far right. I'll have to rewatch this and double
check.
No,
I said the Klansmen were on the far right.
Okay.
Because they hold traditionalist conservative values.
What differentiates Klansmen from the Nazis? Don't they want similar views?
I'd say the only similarity between the Klansmen and the Nazis are the hatred of certain races.
Yeah, they want everything for they want everything to be for white people, which is why generally Nazis and the KKK are put very close to each other. So if the Nazis are on the center left, then it stands to reason the KKK would also be close to the center left.
But they hold numerous other opposing beliefs.
So how do they go from the center left to the far right based on those subtle what I think are subtle differences? Maybe there are major differences, but I don't think they're as major as the hey, let's kick out all the people who aren't white, or let's kill all the people who aren't white.
It's a defining feature, but it's there are other components that make you right or left or authoritarian or libertarian.
Okay.
Like Klansmen and Nazis, yeah, they agree on white supremacy. Well, not even that. The Nazis believe in German supremacy and certain other races and certain other ethnicities. The Klansmen just believe in white supremacy.
Okay, but it's still groups of people, are they not? Like it's collectives, isn't it?
Then there's also there's similarities aren't even all that similar. That's what I'm trying to say. And then they also have different opposing beliefs. That the Klansmen are much more heavily focused on Christianity, and the Klansmen are also a lot more libertarian, as they're more for like states' rights, where Nazis are extremely authoritarian. They want a one world, 1,000-year Reich.
All right, and so where does the alt-right fall in those categories? Are they between the KKK and the Nazis, or are they kind of a combination of both?
It's the whole range between them.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap, I think.
So the alt-right is a term that's like so messy that can literally describe anyone who's for white supremacy.
So if the alt-right includes Nazis,
I don't think you're automatically a collectivist that makes you on the left. I just don't think that's the case.
Well, that was kind of the definition we tried to do. But here's my point. So the alt-right, you said, that includes Nazis and the KKK. If Nazis are in center left, like you said, and the KKK is in the far right.
He said center right. He did say center right. I heard him say center right.
The alt-right is a huge spectrum
that goes from center right to center left.
In the far authoritarian
and doesn't fall anywhere
right.
on the left. So it goes from the alt right goes from center right to far right. Is that your
to far right authoritarians to to center right authoritarians to the far right more center libertarian authoritarian, whatever you would call that.
Fortunately, I am far away. I'm getting further away.
If they are the
that.
far right, then how are they for individualism? That's because they are in essence a collective. So so our definitions that we made for left and right
people. That's
okay. So our definition, I get. Everyone. So the definitions we kind of established towards the beginning when we were talking about left versus right is completely nonsense. We got it wrong.
Nonsense. It's just not nuanced enough.
I agree. I didn't 100% agree with it either.
Because right and left, that they're terms that describe two groups of people.
I get you, but if our definition that we've been using this entire time when talking about the left and the right have been wrong, then this entire conversation is pointless. So that should have been the foundation on which we were building, but you're saying our foundation was flawed, so then everything we built is flawed as well.
Dakota Ham, he came in later into discussion.
Yeah. And also, what we've not really touched up upon is, when it comes to the left versus right, are we taking both in like social and economic standpoints for both sides, like the libertarian and authoritarian left and right? Are we taking in the social and the economic values of those groups?
There's also traditionally right or traditionally left of values that appear on both sides. I can't think of one right now.
Well, you can also be left wing or liberal or be a long time leftist, something like that. But if your politics do not change with the change in times and stuff like that, even though like 30 years ago you were on your left or consider yourself on your left, nowadays you'd probably be more right wing or right of center than you are on the left. And there's a lot of people that think that way. That they think, no, I'm a classical liberal. They're totally right wing.
Because the left has gone further left, whereas the right has mostly stayed. Or people...
No, I think the right has. No, I think the right has. America's right has gone further right.
Yeah, America's right has gone way to the right.
Yeah,
it's gone way to the right because it's racist against people who aren't white. Is that the implication there?
No.
What have they done to go further right?
If you want me to explain something, don't talk in the middle of my explanation.
What have they done to go further right? That's
in America. Let's see. They've become increasingly corrupt. They've become increasingly more war hawkish. They've
Yeah.
Well, that would be more authoritarian rather than more towards the right.
Warmongers tend to be more authoritarian. So, like Hillary Clinton, for instance.
So you're saying if you are in favor of war, you cannot be on the left.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So Hillary Clinton was on the right because she was a warmonger.
Hillary Clinton is on the right.
Yeah, I agree with that actually.
Yeah.
So Obama was also on the right.
He's a right winger.
Okay. So we never had a president who wasn't a left winger. Was Bill Clinton also a right winger?
Yeah, Bill Clinton was the first of the third wave of Democrats that brought the new wave of Democrats that brought the Democrats closer to the center to be more aisle reaching over to the right side and stuff like that. So
I'd argue.
Yeah.
Well, the last true progressive president that the United States had was Jimmy Carter.
Okay, so Carter was the last one. Okay, so everybody since then has been on the far right, and that's why everything's going.
Not far right, just
has been on the right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Ham. All right. So, for instance, like I cited the political compass test as like how it's inaccurate, and HUMANe thought that Donald Trump is not on the authoritarian right. He like it put Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, Barack Obama, George W. Bush on the authoritarian right. Donald Trump being way more authoritarian, Hillary Clinton being to the right of Obama, and George W. Bush being the furthest to the right economically on the economic left right, but not being as authoritarian as the others.
I would frankly agree with that.
Yeah, same here.
As for
for example, here's one of the reasons why I would call Bill Clinton or Obama more right wing than left wing. Obama, when he passed his signature legislation, the Affordable Health Care Act, the core of his core of Obamacare is the individual mandate.
Yeah.
Which is the right wing alternative to single payer. Yeah. The individual mandate was proposed by the Heritage Foundation, proposed by Richard Nixon. Mitt Romney's state had a individual mandate system.
Oh yeah. Speaking of which, it put Mitt Romney to the right of Obama. They were pretty close to one another, left-right wise, but it put them like Obama, like to the little bit to the left of Mitt Romney, but they're on the same authoritarian scale.
Yeah. I can agree.
Not to mention that Obama also we started off with just two wars. He got us involved into 7 interventions. He's increased drone strikes way more than George W. Bush.
Oh yeah.
He's increased. He broke the record for deportations.
Yep.
Although 90% of them are criminals.
Yeah.
But he still broke the record.
All right.
I thought it was the opposite of that. To be honest.
So I showed a chart of the breakdown of the left versus the right, and you don't agree with anything on that chart, then?
I haven't even seen the chart.
Yeah, that was his thing. He came in later after later, so he didn't see the chart at all.
So loudmouth.
So that is the chart. You can check it out right now. So that chart is completely wrong, from my understanding of what you're saying.
He hasn't seen it. He hasn't even seen it, so he'll have to take a look at it to answer that question.
I did not say it was completely wrong. I just thought I only said that putting collectivist values on the left and individualist values on the right as the defining feature between left or right is not nuanced. It's not even nuanced at all.
I know it's not nuanced.
That's my problem with your assertion of like the alt-right possibly being left because they're collectivists and something like that. That's just like so reductionist.
But that would be based off of the definition that I thought we all kind of agreed on. But apparently you didn't agree on that, so I'm wrong on that. Once again, I am completely wrong. All right, so I guess S-Man is checking out.
I'm agreeing with this chart.
Oh no! What I was saying is Zach was saying good night. Zach was saying good night, so I said good night, Zach.
Yeah. So we.
Good night, Zach.
This is a.
Good night, Zach. Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah, let's wrap up. So
yeah, this was a complete waste of time. So yay! Once again, everything 80% of what we talked about was incorrect. So thank you guys for checking in. I'm gonna rewatch this.
This was a complete waste of time.
It was a complete waste of time because the majority of what we talked about was incorrect. That is a waste of time.
We didn't bring on Ham earlier. If we would have brought him on earlier, we could have laid the foundation.
This is the case. Ham is always right, and so anytime anybody disagrees with him, they are wrong.
Okay. Let's just wrap up before Humane.
You see why I call Humane a fucking liar, a fucking strawmanner all the fucking time.
Have you ever been fucking wrong in your entire life?
All the fucking time.
Guys, okay, hang on a second. I need to make something abundantly clear to both Humane and Ham. So hang on a second. Essentially, if we would have brought Ham on earlier, we would have. And if we would have brought him on earlier, we would have seen why he thinks the way he does, and then we could at least it would have been more productive had we brought him on earlier.
Yeah, but we didn't bring him on earlier, so this was an entire waste of fucking 3 hours.
The episode. Humane, you can unmute yourself, by the way, and you can too, Ham. So essentially, this is where we will wrap up. Hopefully next time and I'll wrap up before Humane puts a gun in his mouth along with Ham. Essentially,
and I'll live, and I'll be the last leftist here on the stream. Yes.
I just want to
you can go ahead and end your stream.
I'm looking at the chart, and so far I haven't seen a thing I disagree with yet, and it's also pointing out issues that's not just individualist or collectivist. It's a whole range, a whole rainbow of fucking issues.
Look at the chart where at the top it says don't interfere with society or social lives on the right, and it says interfere with society and social lives on the left.
Yeah.
So you're saying that is not a part of the right or the left. That is inaccurate based on your explanations.
If this is true, the right has always intervened with society and social lives and stuff like that. So according to this chart, no one on the right has ever followed this chart. If you're looking at just that part, everyone on the right did not follow that. A lot of people on the right has intervened with people's lives. So I don't see how your insertion that like because Richard Spencer and his group are collectivists, that makes them left, not right. Because according to this chart, a lot of people...
No, this chart is completely wrong. That's what I'm hearing.
I just want to say that there's a huge fucking difference between the beliefs and principles that you espouse versus the ones you actually live by.
What I'm saying is this chart is inaccurate because it made that statement, and yet these people don't actually live by it.
I'm saying that just because you run as a family values Republican doesn't mean that you don't boink the little boy in the bathroom.
Or spread your legs wide enough at the bathroom at the Minnesota airport to like solicit gay sex.
Okay, so at the top where it says the focus for the right is individuals and the focus for the left is society, that is incorrect.
You're focused on just the top.
You're focusing on like two things on this.
Economic freedom is a goal on the right. Personal freedom is a goal on the left. Is that not correct?
According to this chart, yeah, I guess.
Personal freedom, economic freedom.
So I'm trying to figure out which parts of this chart are incorrect and which parts are right.
I don't see a part that's incorrect.
Then why are you saying that society that right doesn't focus on the individual? Because they haven't done that in the past. They've focused on societal issues. They've interfered with society. So then that part is incorrect. Well, if they focus on the individual as opposed to focusing on the society, is that part incorrect?
Remember what I said
That's
earlier.
what's incorrect? Okay. So those two are incorrect, and yet you don't see anything wrong with this chart. You don't see anything wrong with this chart, and yet you said two things about the chart were incorrect.
What two things did I say was incorrect?
That on the right, we interfere with people's lives, so that part isn't correct.
There's a difference between the beliefs and principles you espouse versus the ones you actually live by.
So the right is hypocrites. They say that these are the things that they embody and that they want.
Oh yes.
But really, they don't do any of it.
Both sides are hypocrites. Both sides are absolutely.
Then what is the point of left versus right? That's the entire purpose of this conversation.
What is the point?
There is no point in left versus right if everybody is lying and nobody actually lives up to what they say they believe. Okay. Hey, we did this. We got something out of this conversation. The term left and the term right are completely fucking useless.
All right, hang on a second. Yeah, I think it's a bit of a dick-waving contest with how people, I'm so right-wing or so left-wing. But yeah.
I agree.
So this is where we'll wrap up before HUMANE starts putting the bullet.
Yeah, no, that's where we're wrapping up. We actually did accomplish something. Left and right are meaningless. There's no such thing as left and right.
All right, so this is where we're going to wrap up before HUMANE starts shooting at Cultaham and Jonathan.
I hope he starts shooting his load in my butthole.
God
all right, so you like 12 gauge buckshot. All right.
That turns me on. Oh yeah.
So he made his top 10, and he admitted to that.
Anyway, this is where we're gonna wrap up. But yeah, thank you for joining me, everybody. And as always, HUMANE Mind has a testosterone issue. Till next time.
Yeah.
A deficiency?
Yeah, no, HUMANE Mind is a soy boy. That's, yeah.
You sound like you're crying.
You heard it here first.
I don't know if you wrapped up your stream.
I don't think HUMANE Mind even like resembles a soy boy. I think S-Man resembles a soy boy more than...
No, he just said I'm lacking testosterone.
Hair.
No, that's overexposure to estrogen. You know, sometimes, right?
You said that Cultaham had cervical cancer.
Wait, I did?
Cervical cancer?
I might have. Indicating that you don't have a penis, you have a vagina. All right, I'm gonna end my stream.
I wouldn't trade a penis for a vagina. my penis for a vagina. My penis is small.
So small, it's inverted. All right, thanks for hanging out with us. Sorry we wasted 3 hours talking about a subject that we ultimately determined, doesn't really fucking matter. These labels are meaningless. Catch us next week.
Let's talk about something more interesting, like my sex